Imagine standing at the base of a massive stone wall, its blocks so perfectly fitted together that not even a razor blade could slide between them. No mortar, no modern tools, just precision that defies explanation. This isn't science fiction. It's the legacy of the Inca Empire, a civilization that mastered engineering so advanced, it still leaves experts scratching their heads today. How did a people without the wheel, without iron tools, create structures that withstand earthquakes, outlast centuries, and challenge everything we think we know about ancient technology? The answer lies in 50 breathtaking marvels scattered across the Andes, each one a testament to ingenuity that borders on the supernatural. From the moment you lay eyes on Sacsayhuamán, the fortress whose stones weigh as much as 300 tons yet fit together like pieces of a puzzle, you realize the Incas didn't just build, they engineered on a scale that modern science struggles to replicate. Their aqueducts functioned flawlessly without a single drop of cement. Their roads carved through mountains like ribbons of stone, connecting an empire larger than Rome. And perhaps most astonishing of all, they did it all without written language or blueprints, relying instead on knowledge so deeply ingrained, it seems almost mystical. What secrets did they possess? What forgotten techniques allowed them to bend stone to their will? This is more than a history lesson. It's a journey into the heart of one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Over the next 50 revelations, we'll uncover the truth behind these engineering feats, how they were built, why they endure, and why even today's brightest minds can't fully explain them. You'll see terraces that defy gravity, temples aligned with celestial precision, and water systems that put modern hydraulics to shame. But beyond the stones and structures, you'll discover something even more profound, a civilization that saw the world differently, turning impossible challenges into triumphs that still leave us in awe. So take a step into the unknown. The past isn't just waiting to be remembered, it's waiting to astonish you. High above the city of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán stands as a silent giant, its walls a breathtaking display of precision that mocks our understanding of ancient engineering. Each block in these towering ramparts, some weighing as much as 160 tons, fits against its neighbor with such exactness, you'd swear they were melted together. But here's the thing, the Incas didn't use mortar, they didn't have steel tools, and yet these stones cling to one another so tightly, not even 5 centuries of earthquakes have managed to pry them apart. Look closer and the real magic reveals itself. The blocks aren't uniform cubes, they're irregular polygons, each one uniquely shaped with curves, angles, and protrusions that lock into place like a 3-dimensional jigsaw. Modern engineers have tried to recreate this technique using laser measurements and computer modeling, but no one has matched the Incas' flawless craftsmanship. How did they do it? One theory suggests they used simple tools like stone hammers and bronze chisels to painstakingly test fit each block, tapping and adjusting until the fit was perfect. Others believe they softened the stone with plant acids, allowing them to mold it like clay before it hardened again. But perhaps the most striking detail isn't just how these walls were built, it's why they've lasted. Unlike rigid modern construction, Sacsayhuamán's interlocking design allows the stones to shift slightly during tremors, absorbing the energy rather than cracking. Its earthquake-resistant architecture perfected centuries before the term even existed. And remember, the Incas had no written language, no formal engineering manuals. This knowledge was passed down through generations, carved not into paper but into the very bones of the Andes. What looks like a fortress is really a monument to human ingenuity, an answer chiseled in stone to a question we're still learning how to ask. If Sacsayhuamán leaves you questioning how stone could be shaped so perfectly, Ollantaytambo's rose-colored giants will make you wonder how they got there at all. Nestled in the sacred valley, this ancient site boasts megaliths so massive, so improbably placed, that their very existence seems to defy physics. We're talking about granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons, each one hauled from quarries across the valley, over rivers and up steep mountainsides, all without wheels, pulleys or draft animals. Picture this: workers transporting slabs heavier than a loaded semi-truck, not on flat ground but along narrow mountain paths with sheer drops. The quarries were nearly 4 miles away, separated by the roaring Urubamba River. No cranes, no machinery, just ropes, ramps, and raw manpower. Some theories suggest they may have used log rollers or carved grooves into the stone to guide them downhill. Others propose they waited for seasonal floods to float the blocks partway. But even these explanations feel incomplete because once the stones arrived, the real challenge began. At the temple site, these megaliths were lifted into place with such precision that there seems a line flawlessly despite their uneven shapes. Even more baffling, the angles cut into these stones aren't just decorative, they're structural, designed to interlock and redistribute weight in ways that modern engineers would need advanced software to calculate. And then there's the rock itself. This type of granite is notoriously difficult to work with, requiring tools harder than the stone to shape it. Yet, the Incas carved it with what appears to be effortless mastery. What truly sets Ollantaytambo apart, though, is how these stones fit into the landscape. The entire complex is a celestial observatory, a fortress, and a temple rolled into one. The walls align with solstice sunrises, and the terraces act like a giant staircase to the heavens. Every block feels intentional, as if the mountain itself was reshaped to serve a higher purpose. It's not just engineering, it's architecture fused with astronomy, hydrology, and spirituality. So how did they do it? Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question. The mystery isn't just about the physical act of moving stone. It's about understanding a culture that saw mountains as living beings, stones as ancestors, and construction as a sacred dialogue with the earth. When you stand before these megaliths, you're not just looking at ancient walls, you're witnessing a conversation between humans and the cosmos carved in rose-colored granite. Hidden among Chinese letter PEAKS of the Andes, Machu Picchu isn't just a city of breathtaking beauty, it's a masterclass in survival. Built directly atop 2 fault lines in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth, this 15th-century marvel should have crumbled long ago. Instead, it stands untouched, its stones unmoved by centuries of earthquakes that have toppled modern buildings nearby. The secret: every wall, every doorway, every foundation here was engineered with a single, brilliant principle: flexibility. Take a closer look at those iconic trapezoidal doorways. They're not just aesthetic choices, each one narrows slightly toward the top, distributing weight unevenly to create a stable, interlocking structure. Unlike rigid rectangular frames that crack under stress, these angled designs allow the entire doorway to sway during tremors, then settle back into place like a tree bending in the wind. The same logic applies to the walls themselves, which lean inward by up to 8 degrees. This subtle tilt lowers the center of gravity, making the entire structure more resistant to shaking. Even the mortar-free joints play a role. The tiny gaps between stones let them shift millimeters during quakes, absorbing energy that would otherwise shatter them. But the real genius lies beneath your feet. The Inca builders didn't fight the mountain, they worked with it. Instead of leveling the bedrock, they crafted foundations that followed its natural contours, allowing the earth to move without tearing the city apart. Underground drainage channels prevent water from softening the soil during rains, avoiding liquefaction that destabilizes modern constructions, and those massive retaining walls. They're not just holding up terraces, they're acting as shock absorbers, dissipating seismic waves through thousands of interlocking stones. Yet perhaps most astonishing is how seamlessly form and function merge here. What appears as artistic flourish, the rhythmic pattern of stonework, the playful asymmetry of windows, is actually calculated engineering. the Incas understood something modern architects are only now rediscovering: rigidity is weakness. By embracing movement, by designing structures that dance with the earth rather than resist it, they created a city that time itself can't shake loose. As you walk these paths, you're not just tracing ancient footsteps, you're stepping inside a 500-year-old lesson on how to build for eternity. High in the rugged hills above Cusco, the terraced gardens of Tipón unfold like a living blueprint of the Incas' mastery over water, a symphony of stone and fluid that still hums with precision after 500 years. While medieval Europe struggled with rudimentary aqueducts, the Incas engineered a hydraulic network so advanced, its fountains bubble to life today as if time itself had paused. This isn't just irrigation, it's liquid architecture, a testament to a civilization that treated water not as a resource to control, but as a sacred force to converse with. The heart of Tipón's genius lies in its gradients. Every canal, every terrace, every spillway was calculated with a mathematician's precision, exploiting gravity to guide water through a labyrinth of channels without pumps or pressure. Walk along these pathways and you'll notice something astonishing. The slopes vary almost imperceptibly, some descending less than 1 degree, enough to keep the water moving smoothly without eroding the stone. Modern engineers would need laser levels to replicate such subtlety, yet the Incas achieved it with little more than observing sticks and trial and error. But the real marvel isn't just the movement of water, it's how they choreographed its behavior. At the center of the complex, a ceremonial fountain cascades down 16 terraces, each step aerating the flow to prevent stagnation. The design isn't just functional, it's medicinal, mimicking natural mountain springs to keep the water pure. Nearby, distribution gates split channels into narrower streams, regulating pressure like valves in a modern plumbing system. And then there are the sleeping canals, designed to slow water's journey during dry seasons, ensuring every drop reached the crops that fed an empire. What's most striking, though, is how these systems reflect a philosophy. The Incas didn't just see water as a tool, they revered it as a mirror of the cosmos. Channels align with solstice sunrises, and fountains echo the sound of rain in sacred caves. Even the terraces' curves mimic the contours of nearby peaks, weaving the flow of water into the rhythm of the Andes. While Europeans of the same era were forcing rivers into straight lines, the Incas were listening to them, learning their language and bending stone to harmonize with nature's pulse. Tipón doesn't just challenge our assumptions about ancient technology, it redefines them. Here, engineering and spirituality flow together, proving that the greatest innovations aren't conquered but conversed with. As you stand beside these still gurgling channels, you're not just witnessing a feat of hydraulics, you're hearing a civilization speak across centuries, its voice carried not on parchment but on water itself. Deep in the sacred valley, the concentric rings of moray spiral into the earth like a giant stone fingerprint, a mysterious, sunken amphitheater where the Incas didn't grow crops so much as they grew knowledge. These aren't ordinary terraces. Each level plunges deeper, creating a temperature gradient so precise that moving from the top to bottom is like walking from the equator to the Arctic in just 100 feet. Scientists have measured differences of up to 27 degrees Fahrenheit between the highest and lowest rings, a staggering feat of microclimate engineering that turned these circles into a living laboratory. What sets moray apart is how it transforms elevation into experimentation. The shallow upper terraces bask in warm sunlight, perfect for crops like maize and quinoa, while the deeper rings trap cold air, mimicking the chilly high-altitude conditions where potatoes and other tubers thrive. But here's the twist: the Incas didn't just rely on nature's gradients, they enhanced them. The terrace's curved walls absorb sunlight during the day, radiating heat at night to prevent frost, while intricate drainage channels keep roots from drowning in the rainy season. It's climate control without a single thermostat. modern agronomists have confirmed what the Incas likely discovered through centuries of observation. Each terrace acts like a distinct ecological zone, allowing them to test how crops adapted to different temperatures, humidity levels, and sunlight exposure. Imagine planting the same strain of potato across multiple levels, then observing which tier yielded the hardiest harvest, a controlled experiment on a monumental scale. Some researchers even speculate the terraces served as a sort of crop database, helping the empire predict which plants would succeed in newly conquered territories. Yet the true brilliance lies in the design's subtlety. Unlike rigid modern greenhouses, Moray's terraces work with natural forces rather than against them. The circular shape minimizes wind damage, while the stepped layers create pockets of still air that protect delicate seedlings. Even the soil itself varies from level to level, imported from different regions to match the conditions of distant growing zones. Walking through Moray isn't just stepping through history, it's stepping through geography, each ring a snapshot of ecosystems scattered across the Andes. What emerges isn't just a farming technique but a philosophy. The Incas didn't see land as something to dominate, they saw it as a teacher, its contours offering lessons in resilience and adaptation. While European agriculture of the same era relied on brute force monocropping, Moray whispers a different approach: observe, adapt, collaborate. 5 centuries later, as climate change reshapes our own farming challenges, these sunken circles feel less like ruins and more like a blueprint, a reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about controlling nature but learning its language. Floating like mirages on the mirrored surface of Lake Titicaca, the islands of the Yoros people defy logic, entire villages bobbing on mats of reeds, untethered to the earth, yet enduring for generations. This isn't just a feat of survival, it's a masterwork of material science crafted by Inca descendants who turned fragile totora reeds into something stronger than steel. Picture walking on ground that sways beneath your feet, where homes, boats, even the very soil underfoot are woven from the same golden stalks that rise from the lake. The secret lies in the totora's cellular structure: spongy, air-filled fibers that trap buoyant gases as they decompose, but harvesting the reeds is just the beginning. Layer upon layer of dried totora are lashed together with ropes made from their own fibers, forming rafts up to 6 feet thick. The bottom layers, constantly submerged, rot over time, but here's the brilliance: new reeds are added to the top in a cycle that mimics natural growth. It's a living architecture, constantly renewed like skin shedding old cells. What's truly astonishing is how these islands adapt. Unlike static landmasses, they can be towed to new locations, entire communities pivoting to follow fish migrations or escape storms. Anchored only by ropes tied to eucalyptus stakes driven into the lake bed, they rise and fall with Titicaca's tides, absorbing waves instead of resisting them. Even the houses exhibit this fluid intelligence. Reed walls breathe with humidity, staying cool by day and insulating warmth at night, while floors thicken or thin seasonally to regulate temperature. But the real marvel isn't just the engineering, it's the symbiosis. Every part of the totora serves a purpose. The youngest reeds become food, tasting faintly like celery. Mature stalks weave into boats shaped like crescent moons, their upturned tips slicing through high-altitude winds. Waste fibers compost into fertile mats for growing quinoa in floating gardens. Nothing is wasted because nothing can be. In a world without hardware stores or landfills, sustainability isn't a choice, it's woven into every strand. Standing on these islands, you realize they're more than habitats. They're a philosophy made tangible, proof that fragility and strength aren't opposites but partners. Where modern engineers might see weakness in reeds, the Yoros saw possibility, building not just on water but with it. 500 years later, as we grapple with rising seas and vanishing resources, these floating villages whisper a radical idea. Perhaps resilience isn't about fighting nature's constraints but dancing within them. Spanning a dizzying gorge over the Apurimac River, the Sacsayhuamán Bridge dangles 90 feet above raging waters, a slender thread of woven grass that defies gravity, time, and modern logic. This isn't just a crossing, it's a living heirloom rebuilt entirely by hand every single year using techniques unchanged since the Inca Empire. Picture hundreds of villagers gathering at dawn, twisting iku grass into cords thicker than a man's arm, weaving strength from fragility in a ritual that transforms humble stalks into a structure capable of bearing the weight of an entire community. The physics alone boggle the mind. Unlike modern steel cables which rely on rigid tension, Sacsayhuamán's strength comes from its flexibility. 6 massive grass ropes form the bridge's core, 2 as footpaths, 2 as handrails, and 2 as anchors, each woven from dozens of smaller cords that distribute stress like a spider's web. When winds howl through the canyon, the entire structure sways and stretches, absorbing forces that would snap a rigid span. The secret lies in the iku grass itself. Sun-dried and meticulously braided, its fibers gain a tensile strength rivaling synthetic ropes, while its natural oils resist rot. But raw material is only half the equation. What truly makes Sacsayhuamán miraculous is the human element. For 3 days each June, 4 Quechua communities reunite to rebuild the bridge in a ceremony blending engineering with spirituality. Men descend cliffs to collect fresh grass, while women pound it with stones to soften the fibers. Elders direct the twisting of primary cables using techniques passed down orally for centuries. No blueprints, no manuals, just muscle memory and collective wisdom. As the new ropes stretch across the gorge, woven together with smaller lashings, the old bridge is ceremonially cut loose, tumbling into the river below as an offering to Pachamama, the Earth Mother. This annual renewal isn't just maintenance, it's a dialogue between past and present. Every knot tied, every strand braided reinforces more than the bridge. It weaves together generations of knowledge. Children learn by watching, their hands eventually inheriting the rhythm of the weave. Modern engineers marvel at how the bridge's design anticipates concepts like load distribution and harmonic damping, principles the Incas understood intuitively. Standing on that swaying walkway, you're not just crossing a river, you're walking across time, treading a fragile yet unbroken line between an empire's ingenuity and the hands that keep it alive today. The true lesson of Sacsayhuamán isn't in the ropes but in the ritual. In a world obsessed with permanence, here's a testament to the power of renewal, a reminder that some things endure not despite being remade but because they are. At the heart of Cusco, where Inca streets collide with Spanish colonial walls, lies a secret hidden in plain sight. Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, isn't just a sacred site. It's a celestial clock carved in stone, its walls and windows whispering alignment so precise they could predict solstices down to the minute. When Spanish chroniclers first described this temple, they marveled at its gold-covered walls but missed its true brilliance, an architecture woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Step inside what remains of Coricancha today, and you'll find shadows that don't behave as they should. During the June solstice, sunlight slices THROUGH Chinese letter WINDOWS like a laser, striking golden plaques placed to ignite with dawn's first light. These weren't decorative touches, they were astronomical markers. The Incas didn't merely observe the sun, they conversed with it, designing doorways that framed the rising sun on equinoxes, and niches that caught the winter solstice sun at its lowest arc. Even the trapezoidal shape of every entrance served a purpose. The angled sides created precise sight lines to track the sun's shifting path across the seasons. What's staggering is the scale of their precision. Modern measurements reveal the temple's eastern wall aligns within half a degree of true east, an accuracy rivaling modern compasses achieved without magnetic instruments. The courtyard's central axis points directly to the December solstice sunrise, while underground channels funneled water in patterns mirroring the Milky Way, which the Incas called Mayu, the celestial river. This wasn't just symbolism, it was sacred engineering, blending hydraulics, astronomy, and spirituality into a single vision. But Coricancha's genius extends beyond its walls. The temple acted as the hub of a vast astronomical network. Lines radiating from its doors connected to other sacred sites, Sacsayhuamites with carved stone maps, hilltop ushnas serving as observation platforms forming an empire-wide calendar system. When certain alignments lit up at Coricancha, priests stationed miles away would see corresponding triggers on distant horizons, synchronizing rituals across thousands of square miles. Imagine it, an ancient internet of sunlight and stone transmitting messages without a single written word. Perhaps most revolutionary is what this reveals about Inca science. They didn't just build temples to worship the sun, they reverse-engineered its movements. By tracking solar cycles across generations, they calculated a year length of 365.25 days, matching our modern calendar. Their sex system, a web of imaginary lines connecting hundreds of sacred points, functioned as both a spiritual map and a sophisticated mathematical model for predicting celestial events. Standing in Coricancha's courtyard today, you're not just walking through ruins, you're stepping into an observatory where every stone held meaning, where walls were textbooks and light itself was the ink. While European astronomers of the same era relied on cumbersome brass astrolabes, the Incas turned entire mountains into precision instruments. Their legacy isn't just in what they built, but in how they saw, a reminder that the greatest scientific breakthroughs often begin not with tools, but with watching the world closely enough to hear its rhythms. Beneath the ruins of Picolacta, a sprawling pre-Inca city later claimed by the empire, lies a hidden world of tunnels so meticulously crafted, they feel less like passages and more like arteries, veins of stone pulsing with unanswered questions. While tourists wander the geometric streets above, these subterranean corridors remain largely unexplored, their smooth walls whispering of a purpose lost to time. Were they escape routes for warriors, channels for sacred waters, or perhaps something far more enigmatic? Unlike the rough-hewn tunnels of other ancient sites, Picolacta's underground network reveals an almost surgical precision. The walls are lined with andesite blocks cut so uniformly they could pass for modern concrete. But here's the mystery: these passages twist and turn with no clear pattern, some descending abruptly only to dead end, while others spiral into chambers with no obvious function. Archaeologists have discovered niches carved at precise intervals too small for storage, too deliberate for mere ornamentation. One prevailing theory suggests they held torches or offerings, lighting rituals conducted in pitch darkness. Yet the tunnels also feature intricate drainage channels, hinting at a dual role in controlling the water that still trickles through the site during rainy seasons. Then there's the acoustics. Stand in certain chambers, and your voice carries with unnatural clarity, as if the walls were tuned like instruments. Experiments reveal sound waves traveling farther and cleaner here than in any natural cave, a phenomenon the builders may have exploited for communication or ceremonial chants. Even more baffling is how these tunnels intersect with the city above. Strategic openings align with key structures, including what scholars believe was a ceremonial plaza, suggesting the underground wasn't just utilitarian but symbolic, a mirror world beneath the feet of the living. The construction itself defies logic. Without metal tools or artificial light, workers carved through bedrock with nothing but stone hammers and patience. The tunnel's curves show no chisel marks, only the smooth, polished surfaces of stones rubbed for generations. Some researchers propose they used abrasive sand and water to grind the rock gradually, a technique that would demand lifetimes of labor. Others point to the unusual lack of debris. Every gram of excavated stone vanished without a trace, possibly repurposed into the city's towering walls. What lingers most isn't just the how, but the why. Nearby Weri sites lack such elaborate subterranean networks, making Picolacta an anomaly. Could these tunnels have been a prototype for the Incas' later underground projects? Or were they a sacred blueprint mapping the journey of souls through the underworld? The answers may lie deeper still, literally. Geophysical surveys hint at undiscovered chambers further down, sealed behind collapses or deliberate blockages. Until those shadows are breached, Picolactus tunnels remain a riddle wrapped in stone, a labyrinth where every turn unearths new wonder. Clinging to the steep slopes of the sacred valley, the terraces of Pisac don't just carve into the mountainside, they dance with it, a symphony of stone and soil that turns near vertical cliffs into fertile gardens. These aren't just steps on a hill, they're a masterclass in geotechnical engineering, each tier meticulously designed to outlast empires. While modern farms battle erosion with concrete barriers and chemical treatments, Pisac's terraces have held strong for over 6 centuries, their stones still perfectly aligned, their soils still rich enough to feed entire communities. How did the Incas achieve what modern agriculture struggles to replicate? The answer lies in their intimate understanding of two forces, gravity and water. Walk along these terraces today and you'll notice something extraordinary. Every wall leans slightly inward, a subtle tilt that does more than just hold back dirt. This angle allows the stones to settle tighter under pressure, shifting minutely during earthquakes or heavy rains without collapsing. The Incas didn't use mortar. Instead, they embedded small drainage holes at the base of each wall, creating a system where excess water could escape without undermining the structure. It's a principle modern engineers call dynamic retention, but here it was perfected with nothing more than observation and trial. Yet the real genius lies beneath the surface. Each terrace is built atop a foundation of coarse gravel, acting like a natural sponge to absorb and redistribute moisture. The topsoil itself is layered like a cake, loose volcanic ash on top for planting, denser clay beneath to retain nutrients, and sand in between to facilitate drainage. This trifecta prevents waterlogging during downpours and retains humidity during droughts, creating self-regulating microclimates. At higher elevations, the terraces grow cold-resistant tubers like oca and mashua, while lower tiers bask in warmth for maize and quinoa. It's as if the Incas designed each level to whisper to the crops planted there, coaxing life from stone. But Pisac's terraces aren't just functional, they're mathematical poetry. The spacing between each tier corresponds to the angle of the sun at different times of year, ensuring no plant casts a shadow on its neighbor for too long. The curves mirror the natural contours of the mountains, reducing wind shear that could strip away topsoil. Even the retaining walls double as thermal batteries, absorbing heat by day and releasing it by night to ward off frost. Modern satellite imaging reveals something even more astonishing. The entire system aligns with underground water channels, directing springs to exactly where they're needed without a single pump or pipe. What makes these terraces truly humbling is their legacy. After 500 years, they still function exactly as intended, while contemporary agricultural projects nearby battle soil depletion and landslides. The Incas didn't conquer the land, they listened to it, recognizing that the secret to longevity wasn't forcing nature into submission, but collaborating with its rhythms. As you stand on these green stairways to the sky, you're not just looking at ancient farming, you're witnessing a dialogue between humanity and the earth, etched into the very bones of the Andes. Hidden high in the mountains near Cusco, the so-called Star Gate of Amaru-Makawasi isn't just another Inca ruin. It's a riddle carved in stone, a doorway leading nowhere that somehow feels charged with purpose. This mysterious 7-foot-tall niche, perfectly sculpted into a massive rock face, resembles an altar, a portal, or perhaps a frame for something long vanished. Its smooth, geometric edges defy erosion, while the shallow alcove at its center holds neither artifact nor inscription, only silence. What unfolds here isn't just archaeology, it's a detective story where every clue raises new questions. Step closer and the anomalies multiply. The gate's trapezoidal shape mirrors sacred Inca doorways, but its proportions are unusually precise, aligning perfectly with celestial events. During the winter solstice, sunlight strikes the inner chamber at an angle that illuminates carved grooves some researchers believe could have held ceremonial objects or served as sightlines for astronomical observations. Others point to the rock's unusual composition, local andesite laced with quartz veins that vibrate at specific frequencies, leading to speculation about sound-based rituals. Then there's the name itself, Amaru, meaning serpent in Quechua, evoking the Inca's celestial serpent deity associated with portals between worlds. Theories about this site range from scholarly to sensational. Mainstream archaeologists suggest it was a Ushnu, an Inca ceremonial platform where priests made offerings to the sun. But local legends tell of a gateway to the gods, a place where shamans could traverse dimensions. Intriguingly, similar door-like carvings appear at distant Inca sites, all oriented towards significant mountain peaks or solstice alignments. Could these have been part of a sprawling pilgrimage route? Or markers for an empire-wide spiritual network? What makes Amaru Maka Wasi particularly haunting is how it resists categorization. Unlike temples or storehouses, its purpose isn't written in its form. The lack of wear on the stone suggests it wasn't used daily, while the absence of soot or offerings baffles those expecting an altar. Some propose it was a training site for Inca masons given the nearby quarries. Others note its alignment with the Milky Way during the rainy season, hinting at a celestial calendar function. The most compelling clue might lie underfoot, intricate channels carved into the bedrock, possibly for liquid offerings that mirrored the stars above. Standing before this silent gateway, you're left with more questions than answers. Perhaps that's the point. The Incas revered liminal spaces, thresholds where Earth met sky, past met future, the seen brushed against the unseen. Whether practical or mystical, Amaru Maka Wasi endures as a testament to a civilization comfortable with mystery, one that carved its deepest questions into the living rock and left the solving to those who dared to wonder. Stretching over 25,000 miles across some of the most brutal terrain on Earth, the Quhapac Nyan wasn't just a road, it was the lifeblood of an empire. Imagine a highway system chiseled into cliff faces, vaulting across ravines on woven bridges, and clinging to mountain passes so high clouds drift beneath your feet. This was the Incas' masterpiece of mobility, a network so vast it could span the circumference of our planet if laid end to end. But distance alone doesn't capture its genius. What makes these roads extraordinary isn't just where they went, but how they conquered the impossible. Take the staircases. Where modern engineers might blast through rock, the Incas carved steps directly into mountainsides, thousands of them, each one angled precisely to match a porter's stride. On steep slopes, they built retaining walls to prevent landslides, while in deserts, they laid stones close together to minimize heat absorption, keeping the surface cool underfoot. But the real marvel lies in the subtleties. Drainage channels run alongside every path, some so precisely graded they still divert rainwater 5 centuries later. In muddy lowlands, roads were elevated on causeways made from crushed stone and clay, an ancient version of modern roadbed engineering, while high-altitude sections used local gravel to prevent frost heaving. Every inch was tailored to its environment, as if the land itself had been consulted during construction. Then there were the chasms, where rivers tore through valleys. The Incas engineered suspension bridges from woven grass cables thicker than a man's torso. These weren't static structures, they swayed with the wind, distributing weight dynamically to withstand forces that would snap rigid spans. Villagers were tasked with maintaining their local bridge, replacing frayed cords in an endless cycle of renewal. Couriers sprinted across them at a dead run, trusting the fiber's elasticity to absorb their momentum. One Spanish conquistador, terrified by the bouncing walkway, described crossing on hands and knees while Inca children dashed past him laughing. Speed was the system's pulse. Relay runners called chasquis could carry messages from Quito to Cusco, a distance of 1,200 miles, in under a week. Stations dotted the route every 6 miles, stocked with fresh runners who'd grab the knotted quipu message and sprint to the next post without breaking stride. At night, torches flashed signals across ridges, a proto-telegraph linking the empire in real time. By comparison, Rome's famed couriers averaged 30 miles a day. The chasquis could cover twice that in mere hours, thanks to roads engineered for velocity. But perhaps the most astonishing detail isn't the roads themselves, it's how they reshaped geography. The Incas didn't just adapt to mountains, they defied them. Tunnels bored through solid rock, switchbacks scaled near vertical cliffs, and at altitudes where modern hikers gasp for oxygen, these paths hummed with commerce. Archaeologists have found sections where the road splits into 3 parallel lanes, one for nobles, one for troops, one for goods, each paved differently based on its purpose. This wasn't mere infrastructure, it was social engineering carved into the earth, a reminder that every stone laid was a statement of imperial vision. Today, fragments of the Quhapacñan still gleam underfoot, polished smooth by countless sandals. Walking them, you're not just following a route, you're tracing the synapses of a colossal empire's brain, a network that turned the Andes' chaos into order. In an age before wheels, before metal tools, the Incas built a system that didn't just connect places, it conquered time. Rising from the high plains near Cusco, the skeletal remains of Rakchai's temple of Huaracocha tell a story of architectural alchemy, where humble mud and volcanic rock fused into something greater than the sum of their parts. At first glance, the towering walls look like ruins, their upper sections long vanished, but come closer and you'll discover a stroke of engineering brilliance. Each surviving wall is actually 2 walls in one, an elegant sandwich of volcanic stone slabs encasing a thick core of hardened adobe. This wasn't just efficient building, it was a masterclass in material science, solving problems modern architects still grapple with today. The outer layers tell the tale. Cut from nearby andesite quarries, these precisely fitted volcanic stones form a protective exoskeleton, their interlocking edges channeling rainwater away from the vulnerable adobe within. But the real magic lies in the gaps between them, a carefully measured air pocket acting as a thermal buffer. During scorching daylight hours, the dark stone absorbs heat before it can penetrate the inner walls, while frigid night temperatures are slowed by this same insulating barrier. It's passive climate control engineered 5 centuries before the term existed. Then there's the adobe core itself, no ordinary mud mixture. Archaeologists analyzing fragments found it blended with straw, llama hair, and even crushed seashells traded from distant coasts. This cocktail of ingredients gave the adobe extraordinary properties. The straw prevented cracking as it dried, the animal fibers added tensile strength, and the calcium-rich shells neutralized the soil's acidity, creating a chemical reaction that hardened the mud almost like cement. When earthquakes struck, as they frequently do in this region, the flexible adobe absorbed shocks while the stone shell prevented collapse, a dynamic dance of materials that outlasted empires. What's truly revolutionary is how this design mirrors the landscape itself. Just as volcanoes layer hardened lava over soft ash, the temple's walls mimic nature's own resilient strategies. Even the construction process revealed deep ecological wisdom. Workers timed the adobe pours for the dry season, allowing months of uninterrupted curing under the fierce Andean sun. The stones were positioned with their natural grain running vertically, mimicking how they formed in the earth to better resist shear forces. Every choice spoke of observation refined through generations. Standing in the shadow of these walls today, you're not just seeing ancient ruins, you're witnessing a dialogue between earth and ingenuity, a reminder that the greatest innovations often come not from conquering nature, but from listening to its whispers. While modern buildings nearby crumble after decades, Rakchai's hybrid walls endure, their secrets still written in the cracks between stone and mud. Deep beneath the ancient temple complex of Sacsayhuamán, a hidden symphony of stone awaits where walls don't just echo sound, they transform it. This isn't mere architecture, it's an instrument carved from the earth itself, a labyrinth of tunnels engineered to bend voices into something otherworldly. Walk these passageways today, and you'll hear whispers from 50 feet away as if they're spoken directly into your ear, while drums struck in one chamber resonate through the entire complex like a heartbeat from the underworld. The Incas didn't just build spaces for sound here, they composed with it, turning acoustics into a sacred technology. At the heart of this sonic marvel lies the Lanzon Gallery, a cruciform chamber housing a towering monolith etched with celestial symbols. But it's not the carvings that astonish, it's how the room sculpts sound. The walls slant inward at precise angles, creating a natural amplifier that projects a priest's chant upward through ventilation shafts, making it seem to rain down from the heavens. Experiments show specific frequencies like those produced by conch shell trumpets called pututus reverberate at exactly 7 Hz, a vibration frequency known to induce trance states. Coincidence or calculated auditory alchemy? Then there are the canals, carved beneath the floors. These water channels do more than drain rainfall, they act as resonance chambers, amplifying certain tones while muffling others. During rituals, the rush of diverted streams would have merged with chants, creating a layered soundscape that mimicked the roar of sacred waterfalls. Archaeologists discovered niches along the tunnels where musicians likely stood, their positions optimized to create overlapping echoes. The effect, a chorus that didn't just surround worshippers, it seemed to emanate from inside their very skulls. What's most chilling is how the acoustics align with the temple's purpose. Chavin was a pilgrimage site where initiates underwent visionary trials, often aided by hallucinogenic brews. The combination of psychoactive substances and engineered sound would have been overwhelming. Whispers morphing into animal growls, footsteps echoing like thunder, chants twisting into the voices of gods. Even the tunnel's curves play tricks. Sound waves bounce off concave walls to create standing waves that produce phantom noises, making the unseen feel terrifyingly present. Modern researchers have mapped these phenomena with laser microphones, revealing something even the Incas might not have fully understood. Certain passageways form natural Helmholtz resonators, chambers that trap and amplify specific frequencies. Others act as acoustic filters, deadening all sound except a narrow band of tones perfect for isolating sacred hymns from background noise. It's as if the entire complex functions like a colossal flute, with wind blowing through its stone lungs to summon voices from the air itself. Standing in these tunnels, you realize the Incas didn't just worship with sound, they weaponized it. Here, acoustics weren't physics, they were portals. When priests chanted into the darkness, they weren't merely speaking to the faithful. They were reshaping reality, bending perception until the boundary between human and divine dissolved into echoes. 5 centuries later, as our own scientists study how sound alters consciousness, Chavin's stones still sing their silent lesson. Sometimes to touch the heavens, you don't need to build upward. You need only listen. High on a windswept plateau in Peru's highlands, the Urok Rumi stones balance with impossible grace. Monoliths the size of small houses perched precariously on slopes so steep, a single misplaced foot could send them tumbling. But they haven't moved in centuries. These aren't just boulders, they're gravitational paradoxes, appearing to levitate above the earth with only the slimmest points of contact. Some dismiss them as freaks of nature, glacial remnants left by retreating ice ages. Yet stand beside them, tracing the way their underside seems sculpted to match the contours of the rocks beneath, and you'll start to wonder, did the Incas play a hand in this defiance of physics? The largest of these stones, nicknamed the Dancer by locals, leans at a heart-stopping angle, its base eroded into a shallow depression that looks almost polished. Geological surveys confirm the rock is native to the area, but its position is anything but natural. The incline defies typical erosion patterns, with stress fractures suggesting it was deliberately shifted into place. Even more telling are the tool marks found along its edges, faint but unmistakable, where something harder than the andesite surface scraped grooves into the stone. Indigenous elders whisper that these rocks were once part of a sacred piedras cansadas ritual, where exhausted stones were allowed to rest in impossible positions as offerings to Pachamama. Spiritual significance swirls around Urok Rumi like the mists that cling to its slopes. To the Incas, massive stones weren't inanimate objects, they were huacas, living embodiments of divine energy. Some researchers believe these balancing acts were astronomical markers, their shadows tracing solstice sunrises across ceremonial platforms below. Others point to their strategic overlook of ancient trade routes, suggesting they served as territorial sentinels or even symbolic gatekeepers to sacred valleys. The most compelling clue lies beneath them, offerings of smashed pottery and charred animal bones found in crevices, evidence that these weren't just curiosities, but altars where the earth itself seemed to hover between realms. Modern engineers have tried to replicate the stone's placement using Inca-era tools with mixed results. Even with ropes and pivots, moving multi-ton boulders into such delicate equilibrium requires near superhuman precision. One team theorized the Incas might have used wet clay to temporarily stabilize the rocks, allowing micro-adjustments before the clay dried and eroded away. Another study noted how seismic activity could theoretically nudge stones into precarious positions over time, except the region's frequent earthquakes should have toppled them long ago. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between nature and nurture. The Incas were masters of augmented geology, spotting naturally occurring oddities and enhancing them into sacred spectacles. At Urok Rumi, they may have found boulders already tilted by glaciers, then subtly refined their angles, carving bases to exaggerate their imbalance until the stones seemed to float. What remains is more than a geological quirk. It's a dialogue between human intention and earthly forces, where every precarious balance reminds us that the line between the impossible and the engineered is thinner than we think. Perched on a mist-shrouded ridge above the Apurimac River, Choqquequirau's terraces cascade down the mountainside like a giant staircase, each step a testament to agricultural ingenuity that turned sheer cliffs into breadbaskets. Known as Machu Picchu's sister city, this remote citadel hides a secret beneath its dramatic vistas, an irrigation system so precise it could calculate water distribution to the droplet, feeding crops at altitudes where modern farms struggle to survive. While visitors marvel at the ruins, the real wonder lies in the dirt underfoot, soil engineered to defy gravity, climate, and time itself. Follow the water and you'll uncover Choqquequirau's hydraulic mastery. Dozens of stone channels woven through the terraces still trickle with runoff from mountaintop springs, their gradients so exact that water flows evenly across every level without erosion. Unlike crude ditches seen at other ancient sites, these are calibrated instruments. Some channels narrow to the width of a finger to regulate flow, while others branch into delicate capillaries that moisten roots directly. Archaeologists found ceramic baffles embedded in the walls, acting like primitive valves to redirect water during droughts, but the true stroke of genius. The channel's zigzag pattern, this seemingly decorative design, actually slows water velocity, preventing nutrient-rich topsoil from washing away during heavy rains, a technique modern permaculture experts call swale farming, reinvented here 5 centuries ago. The terraces themselves are feats of microclimate manipulation. At nearly 10,000 feet, frost should kill crops nightly, yet Choqquequirau's plants thrived year-round. The secret lies in the wall's construction. Alternating layers of crushed rock and clay create thermal mass, absorbing sunlight by day and radiating heat by night to shield tender sprouts. Farmers exploited altitude variations too, planting cold-resistant quinoa on higher tiers, while lower steps basked in warmth for maize and chili peppers. Some terraces even angle slightly westward, catching afternoon sun to extend growing hours. The result was a vertical farm where harvests staggered seasonally, ensuring continuous yields. Most astonishing are the seed laboratories, small experimental plots discovered near ceremonial platforms. Soil analysis reveals they blended earth from distant valleys to mimic foreign growing conditions, test cultivating crops like coca and sweet potato before introducing them empire-wide. This wasn't just subsistence farming, it was agricultural R&D on a grand scale. Even the layout held meaning. Terraces near temples grew sacred plants aligned with celestial events, their flowering timed to coincide with solstice ceremonies. Choqquequirau's legacy isn't just in its stones, but in its soil still fertile after centuries of abandonment. Modern agronomists measured nutrient levels here exceeding nearby untreated fields, a phenomenon traced to the Incas' compost techniques. They layered camelid dung with fermented fish bones from coastal trade networks, creating a slow-release fertilizer that outlasts synthetic alternatives. Walking these terraces today, you're not just seeing ruins, you're walking through a living classroom where every furrow, every channel, every grain of dirt whispers the same lesson. To conquer the Andes, you don't fight the mountain, you learn to think like one. Rising from the grasslands near Lake Pacacha like silent stone sentinels, the towers of Sondor defy easy explanation. These three conical structures, each standing nearly 30 feet tall, form a perfect equilateral triangle across the landscape, a geometry so precise it can't be accidental. While Spanish chroniclers dismissed them as military watchtowers, modern astronomers have uncovered a far more captivating truth. These aren't just buildings, they're stone calendars engineered to track the cosmos with uncanny precision. Climb to the summit of the tallest tower at dawn during the June solstice, and you'll witness sunlight slicing through a strategically placed window to strike the center of the neighboring tower's base. This alignment isn't just symbolic, it's mathematically exact, marking the sun's northernmost position with an accuracy rivaling modern instruments. But the celestial connections don't end there. During the equinoxes, shadows cast by the towers converge at a single point between them, while certain constellations visible through the apertures align with sacred mountain peaks on specific festival dates. The Incas didn't merely observe the heavens here, they built a three-dimensional observatory where architecture and astronomy became one, yet warfare may have played a role too. The tower's strategic hilltop position offers sweeping views of the surrounding valleys critical for spotting approaching armies. But look closer, and their military design reveals eerie sophistication. Arrow slits aren't randomly placed. They're positioned to funnel wind into harmonic frequencies that amplify shouts between sentries, creating a natural communication system. The stone masonry itself is deceptive. What appears to be simple stacked rock actually uses interlocking layers that absorb projectile impacts without crumbling. Archaeologists have found traces of reflective mineral coatings on certain surfaces, suggesting the towers might have functioned as signal mirrors by day and fire beacons by night. The real mystery lies underground. Recent ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of tunnels connecting the tower's passages too narrow for soldiers but perfect for channeling sound. Experiments show conch shell trumpets blown in these chambers produce vibrations that resonate across all three structures, creating an auditory illusion of voices emerging from thin air. Was this acoustic trickery used to intimidate enemies, to simulate the voices of gods during rituals, or perhaps both? What emerges isn't a choice between astronomy and warfare, but a revelation of how the Incas blurred such distinctions. For them, celestial events dictated battle timing, and sacred geometry doubled as tactical advantage. Sondor's towers stand as a testament to this worldview, where every stone served multiple masters, the stars above, the warriors below, and the unseen threads binding them together. To walk among them is to step inside an ancient mind that saw no divide between science and strategy, only patterns waiting to be woven into something greater. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where tangled vines choke the sunlight and rivers carve serpentine paths through uncharted wilderness, legends whisper of a lost city glittering with gold Paititi, the last refuge of the Inca royalty. Unlike the mountain citadels of Machu Picchu or Choqquequirao, this fabled metropolis was said to hide in the steamy lowlands, its temples and towers swallowed by jungle so dense even satellite imagery struggles to penetrate. For centuries, explorers have vanished into these forests chasing rumors of stone corridors and golden idols, but the truth remains shrouded in green. What makes Paititi so tantalizing isn't just its potential treasures, it's the staggering engineering that would have been required to build a functioning city in one of Earth's most hostile environments. Imagine constructing a metropolis without modern tools, where every stone had to be hauled through swamps teeming with venomous snakes, where torrential rains could erase a month's labor in minutes. Yet indigenous oral histories describe Paititi's streets as meticulously planned, with aqueducts channeling floodwaters and buildings elevated on platforms to survive the wet season. Spanish chronicles mention a great white rock at its center, possibly a carved monolith like the one at Machu Picchu's Temple of the Sun, suggesting the Incas transplanted their stoneworking genius to the jungle. But how recent LIDAR surveys have revealed unnaturally straight lines beneath the canopy, potential roads or canals that match descriptions of the city's hydraulic systems designed to tame the unpredictable rivers. The logistics boggle the mind. Unlike mountain quarries where stones could be slid downhill, jungle construction would require moving massive blocks through flooded terrain. Some researchers speculate the Incas used balsa wood rafts to float stones along rivers, while others point to evidence of raised causeways that kept workers above crocodile-infested waters. Even more perplexing are accounts of Paititi's hanging gardens, a terraced agriculture impossible in swampy soil unless supported by elaborate drainage. Aerial scans have detected possible terracing near the Colorado River, where soil analysis shows ancient layers of gravel and sand that could have acted as filters, preventing roots from drowning. Modern expeditions armed with ground-penetrating radar and drone-mounted thermal cameras have edged closer to confirming Paititi's existence. In 2018, a French-Peruvian team discovered a 1-mile-long stone wall hidden near the Mamiria River, its mortarless joints resembling Inca masonry. Nearby, they found circular platforms that may have been ritual spaces or grain stores elevated against floods, but the jungle guards its secrets fiercely. One researcher described watching as vines regrew over a freshly cleared path within days, as if the forest itself were alive and resisting discovery. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies not in stone but in patterns. The Incas were masters of celestial alignment, and satellite imagery suggests possible star-based orientations among the Mamiria ruins. If Paititi exists, it wouldn't just be a random outpost, it would be a mirror of the cosmos like Machu Picchu, its temples positioned to capture solstice sunrises between sacred peaks. Until someone breaches the green veil, Paititi remains half legend, half ghost, a testament to a civilization that didn't just conquer mountains and deserts, but dared to sculpt order from the chaos of the jungle itself. Every overgrown wall, every vine-choked staircase whispers the same question: what other marvels lie waiting beneath the leaves? Nestled in the hills above Cusco, the stone bowls of Kenko emerge from the earth like the hollowed palms of giants' perfect hemispheres carved into living rock with a precision that defies their ancient origins. These aren't rough-hewn basins, they're geometric marvels, their curves so flawless you could roll a marble along their rims without a single wobble. Each one is sculpted from solid granite, a material so hard modern masons need diamond-tipped tools to work it. Yet here they stand, dozens of them, whispering of a civilization that turned stone into liquid symmetry with nothing but patience and forgotten ingenuity. The mystery begins with the bowl's uniformity. Unlike natural depressions formed by erosion, these cavities maintain consistent depth and curvature across every specimen, some spanning over 3 feet in diameter with walls no thicker than a clenched fist. Archaeologists have measured their dimensions using laser scanners, revealing deviations of less than 2 millimeters from perfect hemispherical geometry. Such precision suggests the Incas didn't carve these freehand. They likely employed a guiding system, perhaps wooden compasses or taut strings anchored at a central point. But granite doesn't yield easily to trial and error. One wrong strike could shatter the stone, forcing the artisan to start anew. Then there's the question of tools. Granite ranks between 6 and 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, meaning bronze chisels, the hardest metal available to the Incas, would barely scratch its surface. Experimental archaeologists have theorized 2 possible methods. The first involves pecking, where stone hammers pound away tiny fragments over weeks or months, gradually hollowing the bowl. The second is more ingenious, thermal spalling. By heating the granite with controlled fires, then rapidly cooling it with water or vinegar, the stone's surface would flake away in layers, allowing for smoother finishing. Curiously, some bowls show microscopic pockmarks consistent with this technique, while others bear the telltale striations of abrasion, possibly from sand slurry, rubbed with leather or harder stones like quartzite. But the real wonder lies in their purpose. Unlike utilitarian mortars, these bowls are clustered around ceremonial platforms, often aligned with solstice sunrises or mountain Apu's sacred peaks. During excavations, researchers found traces of chicha, maize beer, and burnt offerings in their depths, hinting at libation rituals. One bowl near Kenko's monolithic gateway contains a peculiar feature, a small hole at its base that channels liquids into an underground chamber. Was this a symbolic offering to the underworld, or part of an auditory ritual where dripping liquid created rhythmic echoes in the caverns below? Modern stoneworkers attempting to replicate these bowls face humbling challenges. Even with electric grinders, achieving such symmetry requires constant measurement and correction. The Incas did it blind, their hands guided by generations of accumulated knowledge, not just of stone, but of celestial patterns and sacred geometry. When sunlight strikes these basins at dawn during the June solstice, their shadows form perfect circles across the rock, a fleeting alignment that whispers of minds who didn't just carve stone, but conversed with the very fabric of the cosmos. Standing before them, you're left with a single, haunting thought. We've mistaken these for bowls when perhaps they were mirrors polished to reflect not faces, but the infinite curve of the sky itself. The suspended aqueducts of Cumb Mayo cling to the cliffs like scars left by some ancient water god, a labyrinth of stone channels carved directly into the living rock, defying gravity and time. These aren't mere ditches, they're precision-engineered waterways snaking along sheer canyon walls, some so narrow you couldn't slide a hand inside, yet wide enough to carry life-giving streams for miles without spilling a drop. Built centuries before the Inca Empire by the Cajamarca people, these aqueducts were so masterfully crafted that the Incas themselves preserved and expanded them, recognizing hydraulic genius when they saw it. What makes Cumb Mayo extraordinary isn't just its age, but its unnerving accuracy. The primary canal stretches over 5 miles, descending at a gradient so slight, less than 1 degree, that water flows just fast enough to avoid stagnation but slow enough to prevent erosion. Modern laser surveys reveal deviations of mere millimeters over entire sections, a feat impossible without advanced leveling techniques. How did pre-Inca engineers achieve such precision? They likely used a simple but brilliant tool, a suspended wooden trough filled with water. By observing the water's surface nature's perfect level, they could carve channels that mirrored the horizon itself. The real marvel, though, lies in the aqueduct's adaptability. Where cliffs blocked the path, workers chiseled tunnels through solid bedrock, some bending at sharp angles to follow the terrain. In other sections, the channels leap across gaps on stone bridges, their mortarless joints so tight they still hold water today. But the most ingenious feature hides in plain sight, strategically placed notches along the canal walls. These weren't mistakes, they acted as primitive filtration systems, catching debris while allowing water to cascade smoothly into secondary channels feeding terraces below. Perhaps most astonishing is how these aqueducts manipulated entire ecosystems. By redirecting water from Pacific slope rivers to the arid highlands, Cajamarca engineers created microclimates where none should exist. Archaeologists have found traces of long-vanished orchards along the routes, their soil enriched by deliberate silt deposits from the canals. The Incas later amplified this legacy, adding branch lines to supply their own agricultural experiments. In a land where water was more precious than gold, Mayo's channels weren't just infrastructure, they were alchemy, turning stone and gravity into abundance. Standing beside these silent waterways, you can almost hear the whispers of the workers who carved them. No written plans, no metal tools, just hands and minds attuned to the language of water, listening as it murmured where it wished to go. Today, as modern engineers battle leaking pipes and crumbling dams, these ancient channels still hum with purpose, a reminder that sometimes the most advanced solutions aren't about forcing nature but following its lead. Rising from the coastal desert like a stepped mountain forged in mudbrick, the fortress of Paramonga commands the landscape with silent authority, a pyramid not of worship but of war. Unlike the celestial alignments of Inca temples, this sprawling complex whispers a different language, the grammar of siegecraft. 3 towering terraces ascend nearly 60 feet, each one protected by walls 16 feet thick at their base, tapering deliberately to destabilize climbers. The design is mercilessly pragmatic. Narrow ramps force attackers into single-file slaughter zones, while parapets project outward to rain stones and spears downward at perfect angles. Even the bricks themselves are weapons. Their unique adobe mixture includes cactus sap, making them resistant to fire arrows that would ignite ordinary mortar. But Paramonga's genius extends beyond its walls. Perched on a natural promontory where the desert meets river valleys, the fortress exploits every geographic advantage. To the west, sheer cliffs deter assaults from the Pacific. To the east, the Fortaleza River snakes through marshlands, forcing invaders to approach along predictable causeways where archers could pick them off. Scouts stationed on the highest terraces had sightlines stretching 30 miles, enough warning to spot enemy columns while they were still specks on the horizon. The Incas didn't just build a stronghold here, they weaponized the land itself, turning elevation, water, and sight into an impenetrable triad. The real tactical brilliance hides in the details. Those seemingly decorative zigzag ramps, their calculated kill zones. Attackers rounding each sharp turn would expose their unshielded sides to defenders above. Storerooms built into the walls held emergency water reserves channeled from underground springs, allowing the garrison to outlast sieges. Even the pyramid's cardinal alignment served military purposes. The eastern staircases catch dawn light, backlighting approaching enemies while leaving defenders in shadow. Modern computer simulations of assaults on Paramonga reveal something chilling. No pre-gunpowder army could have taken it without losing 10 soldiers for every defender. Yet the fortress was more than a deterrent. Its position guarded the southern approach to the Chimu Kingdom, controlling trade routes where coastal fish and cotton flowed inland in exchange for highland metals and wool. The Incas later co-opted this hub, adding their signature trapezoidal doorways but preserving the original brutalist architecture. Walking these ramparts today, you can still feel the duality in every brick, a monument to fear and commerce, where every defensive feature doubled as a statement of power. Paramonga didn't just resist conquest, it whispered a warning across the sands. Some walls aren't meant to be scaled, only revered. What emerges isn't just a relic of war, but a lesson in environmental intimacy. The builders didn't fight the desert's harshness, they harnessed it. Summer fog from the coast condensed on specially textured walls, dripping into cisterns. Winter winds were funneled through vents to cool food stores. Even the brick's thermal mass regulated interior temperatures, creating habitable spaces in a land of extremes. In an age before radar or satellites, this fortress stood as both shield and sentinel, a testament to the art of turning earth and water into an ironclad fist. Perched at the highest sacred point of Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone isn't just another relic, it's a frozen moment of celestial dialogue, a granite timekeeper whispering the sun's secrets across centuries. Known as the hitching post of the sun, this enigmatic pillar emerges from the rock as if grown there, its angles and planes sculpted with a purpose far beyond ornamentation. On the winter solstice, when the sun hangs lowest in the sky, sunlight strikes the stone's central spine with surgical precision, casting no shadow at noon, a phenomenon so exact it couldn't be accidental. This isn't just a calendar, it's a stone sundial engineered to converse with the cosmos. The true marvel lies in the subtleties. Unlike simple obelisks that mark time with crude shadows, the Intihuatana's four facets align with the four cardinal directions, its upper bevels calibrated to the sun's shifting path. During equinoxes, the play of light and shadow divides the stone into perfect symmetrical halves, while summer solstice illuminates the eastern edge at dawn like a glowing seam. Archaeoastronomers using 3D modeling software have confirmed something astonishing. The angles between the stone's planes mirror the sun's declination. The celestial latitude it reaches at solstice is accurate to within a fraction of a degree. How did the Incas achieve such precision without telescopes or written records? The answer hides in the stone's relationship to the landscape. Intihuatana didn't work alone. It functioned as the centerpiece of a vast astronomical network. Nearby peaks frame key solar events. Mount Huayna Picchu's silhouette notches the winter solstice sunrise, while the distant Vilcabamba Range captures the summer solstice sunset. The stone itself sits at a calculated offset from Machu Picchu's central axis, a deliberate error compensating for atmospheric refraction at this altitude, ensuring dawn light struck true. Modern researchers discovered something even more profound. The stone's shadow traces a fractal spiral during certain seasons, matching Inca symbols for the sun's cyclical journey. Yet the Intihuatana's purpose transcended timekeeping. Spanish chroniclers recorded that priests would tie the sun to the stone during winter solstice ceremonies, symbolically preventing its feared disappearance. Beneath the pillar, hidden chambers resonate at specific frequencies during solar alignments, acoustic effects that may have amplified chants into something otherworldly. Touch the stone at noon on the equinox, and you'll feel warmth radiating from its core, a thermal anomaly still unexplained. What emerges isn't just an artifact, but a philosophy. The Incas didn't merely observe the sun, they courted it, carving rock into a mirror of celestial motion. Unlike Western sundials that impose human measurement onto nature, the Intihuatana surrenders to it, a stone that doesn't dictate time but dances with it. 5 centuries later, as astronomers grapple with quantum clocks and GPS satellites, this granite sentinel still keeps perfect time, its shadows stretching across the ruins like fingers pointing to the heavens. Stand beside it and you'll feel the uncanny pull of an ancient truth. Some stones don't just mark moments, they hold them. In the lush, mist-draped Urubamba Valley, the Incas performed an agricultural alchemy that turned swampland into floating fields of gold, not the metallic kind, but the life-giving harvests that fed an empire. These weren't ordinary farms, they were wapu-wapu, elevated garden beds dancing on water-logged terrain, a testament to how the Incas borrowed brilliance from distant neighbors like the Aztecs and made it uniquely their own. Picture this, shallow lakes transformed into grids of fertile rectangles, their bases woven from reeds and anchored with stakes, then piled high with layers of mud, compost, and aquatic plants that decomposed into rich soil. Unlike stationary farmland, these buoyant plots rose and fell with seasonal floods, their roots perpetually nourished by capillary action from the water below. The Aztecs famously built chinampas in Lake Tenochtitlan, but the Incas adapted the concept for their rugged highland valleys. Where Aztec gardens floated on vast lakes, the Yorubamba's wapu thrived in smaller wetlands and riverside marshes. Key differences reveal Inca ingenuity. Their beds were narrower, maximizing edge space for crops to access nutrients, and they incorporated underground water channels that mimicked the valley's natural springs. While the Aztecs relied heavily on canoe traffic to tend their plots, the Incas built walkable causeways between beds from bundled totora reeds, creating a spongy, resilient network that absorbed footsteps without sinking. What truly set these gardens apart was their symbiotic design. Fish darted between the submerged roots, their waste fertilizing the soil, while ducks paddling through the canals kept pests in check. Farmers planted nitrogen-fixing legumes alongside maize, a practice modern agroecology now champions as intercropping. The water itself acted as a thermal blanket, protecting tender shoots from the valley's chilly nights. Archaeologists analyzing soil samples have found traces of ancient fish bones and algae deliberately mixed into the beds, early bioengineering that boosted yields beyond what the Aztecs achieved. Yet the real marvel wasn't just the garden's productivity, it was their resilience. When Spanish chroniclers described the valley as a swamp unfit for beasts, let alone men, they missed the point entirely. The Incas saw potential where others saw only muck, transforming a landscape that should have been hostile into a breadbasket that flourished year-round. Today, as climate change threatens modern agriculture with erratic floods and droughts, these ancient floating fields whisper a radical lesson. Sometimes the best way to conquer nature isn't to drain the swamp, but to rise with it. Walking through the historic center of Cusco, you'll stumble upon walls that seem to defy the very concept of time. Monolithic stone blocks weighing up to 100 tons, fitted together so seamlessly you can't slide a credit card between them. These foundations predate the Spanish conquest, surviving earthquakes that flattened colonial cathedrals built atop them. The mystery isn't just their precision, it's their origin. Who really built these megalithic marvels, the Incas or a vanished civilization lost to history? The case for Inca craftsmanship rests on their well-documented stoneworking prowess. The polygonal shapes, the way each block's curves mirror its neighbors, these techniques echo sites like Sacsayhuamán and Ollantaytambo. But cracks in this theory emerge when you examine the details. Unlike classic Inca masonry, which often features protruding knobs for leverage, Cusco's oldest walls are eerily flush, as if the stones were softened and molded like clay. Even more telling are the tool marks. Inca stonemasons typically left visible pecking patterns from bronze chisels, yet some Cusco stones bear striations resembling saw cuts, a technology thought beyond their reach. Then there's the seismic genius. Modern engineers have mapped how these walls dance during quakes. The mortarless joints allow micro-movements, while the inward lean of the stones creates a self-stabilizing effect. But here's what's strange. Later Inca constructions, while impressive, lack this exact earthquake-resistant design. It's as if the builders of Cusco's core possessed knowledge that even the Inca Empire later forgot or borrowed from someone else. Local legends speak of the Ayamarca, a pre-Inca culture said to have erected cyclopean walls under the guidance of stone-softening sages. Archaeologists pooh-pooh this as myth, yet tantalizing clues linger. Beneath the Coricancha temple, excavations revealed walls stylistically distinct from classic Inca work. Their stone edges beveled at 45-degree angles, a signature seen at Tiahuanaco, a site over 1,000 years older. Carbon dating of organic material trapped between stones hints at phases of construction spanning centuries before the Inca rise. The plot thickens when you consider the logistics. Many of these megaliths are andesite, quarried from mountains over 20 miles away. Transporting them without wheels or draft animals would require a level of coordination suggesting a highly centralized society, one that left no other traces. Unless, of course, those traces were repurposed, the Incas were masterful recyclers, often incorporating older structures into their own. Walk along Calhatanrumayok and you'll see Spanish colonial buildings grafted onto Inca walls, which in turn sit atop even older foundations, an architectural palimpsest whispering of lost chapters. Perhaps the truth lies in the middle. The Incas may have perfected techniques pioneered by their predecessors, just as Renaissance sculptors built on Roman methods. Or maybe they enslaved master builders from conquered cultures, absorbing their secrets. What's undeniable is that these walls hold stories we've yet to fully decipher, not just in their stones but in their silences. After 500 years of tremors, they still stand unbowed, a riddle wrapped in rock, waiting for the next generation to listen closely enough to hear their forgotten names. At the frigid summit of Mount Ampoto, where the air thins to a whisper and glaciers cling to volcanic slopes, the Inca performed rituals that blurred the line between sacrifice and preservation. Here, in this deadly arena of ice and fire, they built shrines so remote, so inhospitable, that even the act of reaching them defied human limits. Yet it was precisely these extreme conditions that engineered one of history's most astonishing acts of accidental conservation, the ice mummies of Ampoto, children frozen in time by the very mountain meant to carry their spirits to the gods. Reconstructing these rituals reveals a chilling mastery of logistics. The journey to Ampoto's summit at 20,000 feet required days of grueling ascent through treacherously thin air, with porters hauling construction materials, offerings, and even live sacrificial llamas up slopes strewn with volcanic rubble. But the Incas didn't just climb, they transformed the mountain. At the crater's rim, workers carved platforms into the ice, anchoring them with stones to prevent slippage, while stealthy tunnels channeled geothermal heat away from fragile structures. Every element was calculated, the shrine's position aligned with the December solstice sunrise, its foundation stabilized by layers of gravel to insulate against the volcano's tremors. This wasn't just architecture, it was a high-stakes negotiation with the mountain itself. The bodies discovered here, like that of the famed Juanita, a teenage girl sacrificed 5 centuries ago, tell a story written in ice. Ampoto's perpetual freeze-dry cycle acted like nature's perfect cryogenic chamber. Sub-zero temperatures halted decomposition, while volcanic sulfur in the air suppressed bacteria. Even the textiles survived intact, their vibrant dyes unfaded, because the Incas had chosen this specific altitude deliberately. Below 18,000 feet, fluctuating temperatures would have caused thaw cycles. Higher up, hurricane-force winds would have shattered the shrines. They'd found a preservation sweet spot in the sky. What's most haunting isn't just the mummy's condition, but the care taken in their placement. Juanita was seated cross-legged, wrapped in a finely woven axu cloth, surrounded by gold figurines and pottery filled with ritual foods offerings frozen mid-gesture. Forensic analysis reveals she drank chicha laced with coca and ayahuasca before her death, likely easing hypoxia's agony as the thin air lulled her into a final sleep. The Incas didn't just leave bodies on the mountain, they engineered a sacred deep freeze, ensuring these messengers to the gods would remain untouched by time. Yet Ampoto was no outlier. Across the Andes, the Incas built similar high-altitude sanctuaries on active volcanoes like Serra Serra and Misti, each one a calculated gamble between geologic danger and divine proximity. At Misti, they constructed a platform just below the sulfurous fumaroles, where toxic gases would deter looters but careful stone channels diverted heat to keep the shrine from igniting. These weren't reckless acts of faith, they were feats of environmental calculus balancing volcanic wrath against celestial access. Standing in the presence of these ice mummies today, you're not just seeing preserved bodies. You're witnessing the intersection of engineering and spirituality, where the Incas turned a volcano's fury into a tool of eternity. The mountain that should have erased them instead became their accomplice, holding these sacrifices in frozen suspension, not as victims of the cold, but as partners in an unspoken pact between humanity and the untamable wild. Spanning the Apurimac River with deceptive grace, the bridge of San Luis Rey appears at first glance to be a relic of Spanish colonialism, but look closer, and you'll find its soul is pure Inca. Built in the 17th century to replace an ancient Andean crossing, this seemingly humble structure hides a revolutionary secret. It's one of the last surviving descendants of the Incas' woven suspension bridges, a living testament to engineering so effective, modern replicas still can't match its elegance. The irony, every concrete and steel bridge erected in this same gorge has crumbled within decades, while this braided grass behemoth, rebuilt annually in the old way, has outlasted them all. The original Inca bridge here was no crude vine walkway, it was a mathematical marvel. Chroniclers described cables as thick as a man's waist, woven from iku grass harvested at precise lunar phases when the fibers held maximum tensile strength. These weren't just ropes, they were composite structures with stiff outer layers protecting flexible inner cores, much like modern suspension bridge cables. The Spanish marveled at how these spans could sway dramatically without snapping, absorbing the kinetic energy of wind and foot traffic that would shatter rigid European designs. When they commissioned San Luis Rey's reconstruction, they kept the Inca foundation stones and anchoring system intact, unknowingly preserving the genius beneath a colonial facade. Modern engineers have dissected what makes this design so resilient. The bridge's hand-woven rails and deck form a dynamic mesh. When one strand weakens, neighboring fibers redistribute the load. Its anchors are textbook examples of passive resistance. Massive stone pylons shaped like inverted keys, their weight amplified by gravity as tension increases. Most strikingly, the entire structure floats slightly above the river's narrowest point, where vortex shedding, the same phenomenon that famously destroyed Washington's Tacoma Narrows Bridge, actually stabilizes the sway. The Incas didn't just build a bridge, they engineered a dance partner for the wind. Compare this to the modern bridges that briefly replaced it. A 1930s steel suspension bridge collapsed within 20 years from metal fatigue exacerbated by canyon winds. Its 1970s concrete successor developed stress fractures from harmonic vibration, a flaw the Inca design naturally mitigates through controlled flexibility. Even today's reinforced concrete spans require constant maintenance, while San Luis Rey's annual renewal ritual, where communities gather to braid new grass cables, ensures perpetual structural health. The lesson isn't just about materials, it's about philosophy. Modern engineering fights nature's chaos with rigidity, while the Incas embraced fluidity, crafting a structure that doesn't resist forces but moves with them. Perhaps the most poignant detail lies in the rebuilding ceremony itself. Each June, Quechua elders teach children the precise knots and weaves used by their ancestors, passing down physics through fingertip memory. As new cables are tensioned using nothing but wooden levers and body weight, the bridge becomes more than infrastructure, it's a living dialogue between generations. Watch this ritual and you'll understand why synthetic replicas fail. They lack the cultural spine that turns grass into grandeur. The bridge of San Luis Rey doesn't just span a river, it bridges centuries, proving that sometimes the most advanced solution is the one that remembers how to listen. Stretching across the Nazca Desert like a colossal canvas, the geoglyphs of the Nazca Plateau remain one of humanity's most mesmerizing mysteries. Hundreds of gigantic lines, geometric shapes, and animal figures etched into the earth, some stretching over 1,200 feet long. Though crafted by the Nazca culture centuries before the Inca Empire rose, these designs raise a tantalizing question. What would the Incas, with their reverence for celestial patterns and mastery of large-scale engineering, have thought when they encountered these sprawling desert artworks? The Nazca lines share an eerie kinship with Inca cosmology. Both cultures transformed landscapes into sacred maps, aligning their creations with solstices, mountain peaks, and celestial events. The famous Nazca hummingbird geoglyph, for instance, points directly to the June solstice sunrise, just as Inca temples like Coricancha were precisely calibrated to capture the sun's first rays on sacred dates. Even the technique of their creation echoes Inca ingenuity. The Nazca people removed dark surface stones to expose lighter subsoil, creating contrast visible from high altitudes, a method not unlike the Incas' own terraforming, where they shifted entire hillsides to align with astronomical phenomena. But the Incas likely saw more than artistic similarity. To an empire that viewed mountains as deities and rivers as veins of the earth, the Nazca lines may have been more than images, they could have been messages. The straight, mile-long lines crisscrossing the desert resemble the Inca sect system, a network of ritual pathways radiating from Cusco to sacred shrines. Were these desert markings a precursor to the Incas' own sacred geography? The giant spider geoglyph, with its elongated leg pointing to water sources, might have resonated with Inca engineers who built extensive aqueducts to honor water as a life-giving force. The real connection, though, lies in shared engineering wisdom. Creating the Nazca lines required precise large-scale planning without aerial vision, something the Incas mastered in their own terraces and roads. Researchers suggest both cultures used simple but brilliant surveying tools, stakes and ropes to plot alignments, and natural vantage points to maintain proportions. The Incas, encountering these desert marvels, might have recognized a kindred intuition, the ability to collaborate with the land rather than conquer it. Perhaps most striking is how both cultures turned barren landscapes into sacred texts. The Nazca Desert's dryness preserved their lines, just as the Andes' harsh altitudes protected Inca stonework. Both understood that true engineering isn't just about function, it's about dialogue. The Nazca spoke to the gods through dust and stone, the Incas answered with water and mortar. Together, they remind us that the greatest designs aren't just seen, they're felt, stretching across time as whispers between civilizations who knew the earth was more than ground beneath their feet. It was a canvas, a compass, and a living being waiting to be heard, carved into sheer cliff faces like the honeycombs of some ancient stone giant. The granaries of Colca defy every assumption about how civilizations store food. These are no ordinary storage pits, they're a masterpiece of preservation engineering, built to outlast seasons, wars, and the ravages of time itself. Picture rows of circular chambers dotting vertical rock walls, some perched hundreds of feet above valley floors, their positions so improbably placed they seem suspended by magic. Yet their true brilliance lies in what you can't see. Intricate ventilation shafts that weave through the mountain like arteries, creating microclimates so precisely controlled, quinoa and potatoes could survive for years without spoiling. The secret starts with location. The Incas didn't choose these cliffs at random, they exploited the Andes' natural refrigeration. Cool alpine winds funnel through the storage chambers, while the rock itself acts as a thermal battery, stabilizing temperatures between 45 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Archaeologists have measured humidity levels inside at a constant 30%, the perfect balance to prevent mold without dehydrating crops. Even the granary's shape plays a role. Their rounded walls eliminate corners where moisture could collect, while small windows angled away from prevailing winds allow airflow without letting in rain. Modern food scientists have recreated these conditions in labs and confirmed their effectiveness. Maize stored using Colca's principles showed negligible spoilage after 3 years. But the real innovation was scalability. At the height of the empire, the Colca system stretched across thousands of miles, with regional variants adapted to local climates. Near the coast, granaries used porous sea rock to enhance airflow, while high-altitude versions incorporated layers of iku grass insulation against freezing nights. Each was strategically positioned along the Quhapak-Nyan road network, creating a decentralized food bank that could feed marching armies with minimal transport. When the Spanish chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon estimated the empire kept a 10-year supply of food in reserve, he wasn't exaggerating. Excavations at one site revealed storage capacity for over 40,000 cubic feet of crops. These granaries didn't just preserve food, they revolutionized warfare. Unlike European armies that relied on pillaging, Inca forces moved swiftly because their supplies were prepositioned in cliffside vaults. A soldier marching from Quito to Cusco would find replenishment stations every 15 miles, each stocked with freeze-dried potatoes chuño, smoked meat charqui, and lightweight quinoa cakes. The system was so efficient, historians estimate the Inca could mobilize 50,000 troops across the empire faster than 16th-century Europe could assemble 10,000. Perhaps the most poignant detail lies in the granary's afterlife. When archaeologists first reopened long-sealed chambers, they found not just preserved food, but traces of the system's caretakers, fiber counting cords, kippus recording inventory, small clay figurines likely left as offerings to Pachamama, even fossilized fingerprints in the mortar. These silent witnesses remind us that Colca wasn't just about engineering, it was about foresight. In a world without writing, without refrigeration, the Incas built a system that didn't just feed an empire, but sustained its memory across generations. Standing before these cliffs today, you're not just looking at storage rooms, you're seeing the calculus of survival etched in stone, where every breeze through ancient vents still whispers the same urgent lesson: prepare, adapt, endure. At the heart of Huánuco Pampa's sprawling ruins, the sunken plaza sinks into the earth like a giant stone bowl, a ceremonial stage where the Incas didn't just address crowds, but orchestrated sound itself. Step into this depression 40 feet wide and suddenly your footsteps echo with unnatural clarity, your voice carrying to the farthest corners without shouting. This isn't accidental acoustics, it's audio engineering carved into the landscape. The plaza's concave walls act like a natural parabolic reflector, bouncing sound waves toward a central platform where priests or rulers would stand. Even a whisper from this focal point travels with startling precision, a phenomenon modern researchers have measured at 75 decibels, comparable to a ringing telephone, at distances exceeding 100 feet. The secret lies in the geometry. The plaza's walls slope inward at exactly 14 degrees, an angle that optimally concentrates sound rather than scattering it. Stone benches ringing the perimeter aren't merely seating. Their flat surfaces reflect mid-range frequencies, the spectrum of human speech, while absorbing distracting high pitches. Archaeoacoustic studies reveal another clever trick. Gravel layers beneath the limestone flooring dampen low-frequency rumble, ensuring clarity even when thousands gathered. During festivals, conch shell trumpets blown from the central platform would have generated standing waves, creating pockets where participants felt sound vibrate through their bodies as much as heard it. But Huánuco Pampa's genius wasn't limited to dry seasons. The same contours that amplify voices also defy floods. A network of underground channels lies hidden beneath the plaza's floor, not crude ditches, but graded conduits with sedimentation chambers to trap debris before it clogs the system. During heavy rains, water cascades down the stepped walls into these channels, which funnel it away at a calibrated pace to prevent erosion. The Inca engineers even accounted for hydraulic jump, diagonal ridges in the channel's slow water velocity, just enough to avoid destructive turbulence, a technique modern civil engineers call energy dissipation. Most astonishing is how these systems intertwine. The drainage channels double as acoustic enhancers, their hollow cavities acting as Helmholtz resonators that amplify specific ritual frequencies. During excavations, archaeologists found offering niches positioned at points where sound waves and water flow would have intersected during storms, suggesting ceremonies timed to harmonic convergence. Even the plaza's depth serves dual purposes. It buffers wind noise that would disrupt speeches while creating a thermal inversion layer that keeps gatherings cooler than the surrounding terrain. Standing in this sunken arena today, you're not just witnessing ancient construction, you're experiencing a multidimensional instrument. The Incas didn't build a plaza, they sculpted a living resonator where architecture, hydrology, and physics converged. While modern stadiums rely on electronic amplification, Huánuco Pampa achieved the same with stone and gravity, proof that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't what we add to the environment, but what we coax from its bones. Hidden within the lush folds of the sacred valley, the cave of Ñupa Iglesias yawns open like a stone mouth frozen mid-whisper, its walls etched with steps that spiral into darkness, its alcoves holding altars too precise to be the work of chance. This isn't just a cavern, it's a riddle carved in rock, a labyrinth where the Incas, or perhaps their mysterious predecessors, blurred the line between architecture and cosmology. The moment you step inside, the anomalies begin. Those so-called steps don't ascend or descend in any practical pattern, they zigzag at erratic intervals, some shallow enough for a child's stride, others so steep they demand climbing. Yet their edges are laser straight, their corners sharp as if cut by diamond tools, defying the erosion that should have softened them over centuries. Theories about Ñupa Iglesias' purpose converge around two spine-tingling possibilities. First, an astronomical observatory. During the June solstice, sunlight pierces the cave's entrance at a precise angle, striking a carved niche deep within, a phenomenon replicated nowhere else in Inca territory. The steps, when mapped three-dimensionally, align with the rising positions of the Pleiades star cluster critical to the Andean agricultural calendar. Even more intriguing are the mirror stones found embedded in the walls, slabs of polished pyrite that would have reflected celestial light into the cave's darkest recesses, turning the entire space into a planetarium where star patterns danced on wet walls during ritual downpours. But the second theory ventures into the metaphysical. Local Quechua elders speak of Ñupa Iglesias as an acupacha, a portal to the underworld. The cave's peculiar acoustics support this. Certain chambers amplify only bass frequencies, creating a disorienting rumble underfoot during earthquakes, as if the mountain itself were growling. Offerings uncovered here, crushed coca leaves, miniature gold figurines, cluster near fissures where geothermal gases once seeped out, suggesting ceremonies leveraged natural hallucinogenic effects. Most haunting is the central altar, its surface scarred by countless small burns. Archaeochemists analyzing the residue found traces of DMT-rich psychedelic snuffs alongside animal fats, a combination that, when ignited, would have produced visions indistinguishable from divine contact. Yet the true enigma lies in the stonework's inconsistency. While some niches showcase classic Inca trapezoidal geometry, others feature T-shaped doorways reminiscent of Tiwanaku, a civilization millennia older. The cave's deepest chamber holds a monolithic throne, whose backrest aligns perfectly with Mount Veronica's snow-capped peak during the winter solstice, an alignment requiring surveying knowledge the Incas supposedly lacked. Could this be a palimpsest of sacred engineering, where each civilization left its mark without erasing the last? Modern attempts to decode Ñupa Iglesias only deepen its mystique. Laser scans reveal hidden channels behind the walls, possibly for directing ritual smoke or groundwater. Thermal imaging shows temperature fluctuations along the steps that mirror the human body's meridians in Andean shamanic traditions. Even the cave's microbial ecosystem is anomalous. Bacteria thrive here that bioluminesce under moonlight, potentially turning ceremonies into unearthly light shows. Standing in this twilight space, you're left with a chilling realization. Ñupa Iglesias wasn't built to fit one purpose, but to defy categorization entirely. Like a stone switchboard between worlds, it welcomed astronomers, priests, and seekers alike, each walking the same steps yet departing with different truths. The cave's final lesson may be the simplest and most profound. Some places aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed. Perched high in the Bolivian Andes, the fortress of Incalajta doesn't just occupy the landscape, it commands it. This sprawling complex of concentric walls and watchtowers clings to a mountainside like a stone spiderweb, its every terrace and corridor designed to turn geography into an impenetrable shield. At first glance, the structure appears chaotic, a jumble of rectangular buildings and curved ramparts, but from the air, a chilling logic emerges. 3 nested rings of defensive walls, each higher than the last, funnel invaders into deadly choke points where archers could rain death from above. The Incas didn't just build a fortress here, they engineered a gauntlet. What makes Incalajta extraordinary isn't just its military might, but how it weaponized the terrain itself. The eastern approach forces attackers to scramble up a steep incline under constant arrow fire, while the western flank drops into a sheer ravine no army could scale. Even the fortress's water supply was a tactical masterpiece, an underground aqueduct fed by mountain springs, impossible to poison or block from outside. Spanish chroniclers later wrote of how defenders could withstand sieges for months, their tiered agricultural terraces providing food while attackers starved in the barren highlands. Trade routes were the lifeblood of the empire, and Incalajta guarded them with ruthless efficiency. Positioned at the crossroads of routes stretching from the Amazon lowlands to the Pacific coast, the fortress functioned less like a gate and more like a valve. Caravans carrying coca leaves from the yungas, tropical feathers from the jungle, or lapis lazuli from Chile had to pass through its shadow. Tax collectors in watchtowers used quipu ropes to record goods, while soldiers ensured compliance, not through brute force alone, but by controlling access to the fortress's legendary warehouses. Within these storehouses lay the real power: dried potatoes, quinoa, and jerky that could feed entire regions during droughts, making rebellion unthinkable when the alternative was famine. The genius of Incalajta's layout reveals itself in the details. Those seemingly random watchtowers, each one covers blind spots in its neighbor's line of sight, creating overlapping fields of fire. The staggered staircases force climbers to expose their unshielded right side, a fatal flaw when facing right-handed defenders. Even the stones tell a story. Unlike the polished masonry of Cusco, these walls are rough-hewn and angular, designed to shatter enemy climbing hooks rather than showcase aesthetic perfection. Yet for all its martial prowess, Incalajta's true legacy lies in its dual nature. By day, the outer courtyards bustled with merchants negotiating under the watchful eyes of scribes. At night, the inner sanctums hosted ceremonies where priests burned offerings to Inti, their chants echoing off walls thick enough to mute the screams of any prisoner in the dungeons below. This was no mere garrison, it was a psychological weapon, a monument to imperial control where every trader, farmer, and conquered chief understood one unspoken truth: the Incas didn't just rule the land. They had rewritten its very rules. As the sun sets behind Incalajta's ragged silhouette, shadows stretch across the valley like grasping fingers. A reminder that the greatest fortresses aren't measured by the height of their walls, but by the depth of their hold on the human imagination. 5 centuries later, the stones still whisper their warning. Some borders aren't crossed, only endured. Beneath the Spanish colonial church of Santo Domingo in Cusco, fragments of a lost golden world still whisper of Coricancha's former glory, the temple of the sun where every surface blazed with metallic sunlight. Before conquest stripped its riches, this sacred complex wasn't merely adorned with gold. It was engineered to become one with light itself. Walls sheathed in hammered sheets so flawless they mirrored the sun's path across the sky. Life-sized statues of deities with golden tears that caught dawn's first rays. Even the gardens held miracles, corn stalks with silver stems and golden ears, cultivated not for harvest but for celestial mimicry. This wasn't ostentation, it was metallurgy transformed into theology. Reconstructing the temple's splendor reveals a mastery of materials that borders on alchemy. The Incas lacked iron tools, yet their goldsmiths produced sheets so thin, less than a millimeter, and uniform. Modern replicas require industrial rolling mills. Artisans likely used smooth stone anvils and polished bronze hammers, annealing the metal between strikes to prevent cracks, a technique still used in aerospace manufacturing today. But the real genius lay in their alloy science. Coricancha's gold wasn't pure, it was intentionally mixed with trace copper, creating a warmer hue that amplified candlelight during nocturnal rituals while resisting tarnish from Andean winds. Spanish looters melted most of it down, but surviving fragments show microscopic tool marks revealing how they achieved such uniformity. By sandwiching gold between layers of tough llama hide and pounding it with concave stone mallets, dispersing force evenly like a primitive hydraulic press. The temple's layout turned precious metals into celestial choreography. During solstices, sunlight entered through trapezoidal windows at precise angles, striking polished gold panels that redirected beams onto ceremonial focal points. A single morning ray could bounce sequentially from wall to ceiling to altar, tracing the path of Viracocha, the creator god. Engineers even accounted for the sun's seasonal declination. Lower angles in winter required tilted reflectors, now recognized as early examples of non-reversing mirrors. At night, the system reversed. Strategically placed oil lamps turned gold surfaces into radiant amplifiers. Their light diffused through translucent quartz prisms to cast rainbow patterns across sacred spaces. What truly staggers modern researchers isn't just the gold's quantity, it's the intentional imperfections. Certain panels contained deliberately uneven thicknesses, creating zones where light diffused rather than reflected. These shadow pockets allowed priests to manipulate illumination during rituals, making statues appear to weep or smile as light shifted. Metallurgists recently analyzed a rare surviving fragment and found nanoscale dimples on its surface, microscopic textures that would have scattered light to produce a muted glow, proving the Incas understood principles of diffuse reflection centuries before their formal scientific discovery. Coricancha's gold wasn't decoration, it was a dynamic, interactive medium. When the wind stirred hanging metal plaques, their vibrations produced frequencies known to induce trance states. Gold-lined water channels created prism effects during ceremonies, projecting shimmering patterns that danced with the currents. Even the act of polishing held meaning. Temple attendants used sand from specific riverbeds, each grain's hardness calculated to achieve the perfect matte-to-gloss gradient across different surfaces. To walk through Coricancha at its zenith would have been to step inside a living kaleidoscope, a place where metallurgy, astronomy, and spirituality fused into a single radiant language. The Spanish saw only wealth to plunder, but the gold's true value wasn't in its weight. It was in its ability to bend light, shape shadows, and make the divine tangible. Today, as laser scans reconstruct the temple's lost geometries, we're left with a humbling realization. The Incas didn't just work gold, they taught it to speak. In the lush valleys of Cochabamba, where the Andes sloped gently toward the Amazon, the Incas performed an agricultural miracle, turning steep hillsides into a patchwork of vertical farms so precise, each terrace functioned like its own miniature ecosystem. Unlike the rigid, uniform terraces seen elsewhere, these cascading platforms were tailored with scientific precision to the valley's unique microclimates, allowing crops as temperamental as coca and as vital as maize to thrive side by side. The secret wasn't just in the stones, it was in the dirt itself, a layered masterpiece of soil engineering that modern agronomists are only beginning to decode. Start with the terrace's anatomy. Each level wasn't merely flattened earth, it was a carefully calculated sandwich of materials. At the base, fist-sized rocks allowed for drainage, preventing roots from drowning during torrential rains. Above this, a layer of coarse sand acted as a filter, stripping excess minerals from the water as it seeped downward. Then came the piece de resistance, a foot-deep blend of topsoil enriched with ground fish bones from Pacific trade networks and fermented llama dung, creating a slow-release fertilizer that nourished crops for years without replenishment. But the real stroke of genius, the Incas didn't use the same soil mix everywhere. Near the valley floor where temperatures soared, they added crushed volcanic stone to retain moisture, while higher terraces incorporated charcoal to absorb sunlight and ward off frost. The crops themselves reveal even deeper sophistication. Coca bushes, sensitive to cold and craving shade, were planted on east-facing slopes where morning sun warmed their roots without scorching their leaves. Just a few feet away, maize, a sun-hungry crop, occupied west-facing terraces angled to maximize afternoon light. The Incas didn't just accommodate these differing needs, they engineered them into existence. By varying terrace heights, they created windbreaks that funneled gentle breezes to deter pests but shielded plants from damaging gusts. Excavations have uncovered pollen evidence of aromatic herbs tucked between rows, a natural pest deterrent that eliminated the need for chemical interventions. What's truly staggering is how these systems interacted with water. Unlike typical terraces that rely on surface channels, Cochabamba's farms hid their plumbing underground. Tiny perforated pipes made of baked clay ran beneath each terrace, delivering water directly to roots through capillary action, an ancient precursor to modern drip irrigation. During droughts, gates made of woven reeds could redirect flow from one terrace to another, prioritizing thirsty crops like maize over hardier tubers. Even the retaining walls played a role. Their mortarless joints allowed trapped moisture to seep through slowly, creating a self-regulating humidity buffer against the dry season. The legacy of Cochabamba's terraces isn't just in their productivity, but in their adaptability. When Spanish colonizers introduced wheat and barley, the system absorbed these foreign crops effortlessly, tweaking soil blends and angles to accommodate new needs. Today, as climate change alters growing conditions worldwide, these ancient practices offer a blueprint, not as a static relic, but as a philosophy. The Incas didn't fight their environment, they listened, then rearranged the very earth to whisper back in the language of abundance. Walking these terraces now, you're not seeing ruins. You're standing inside a living laboratory where every layer of soil, every curve of stone, still murmurs the same urgent lesson. To feed the future, sometimes you must dig deep into the past. Carved into a massive granite boulder high in the Andes, the astronomical ceiling of Sacsayhuamán stretches overhead like a frozen night sky, a celestial map where constellations don't just twinkle but are etched in stone with unnerving precision. This 40-foot-long relief isn't mere decoration. It's a three-dimensional star chart so accurate modern astronomers have identified Orion's belt, the Pleiades, and the Southern Cross among its grooves. But here's what chills the spine. These aren't generic star patterns. They mirror the exact positions these constellations held over Sacsayhuamán during the June solstice in the 15th century. Capturing a cosmic snapshot only visible once every 26,000 years due to Earth's axial precession. Whoever carved this didn't just observe the heavens, they calculated time on a geological scale. Look closer, and the rock reveals its true genius. The constellations aren't static. They're connected by channels that funnel rainwater in deliberate paths, turning the entire surface into a hydraulic planetarium. During solstice downpours, water pools in certain carved depressions representing bright stars like Sirius, while rivulets trace the Milky Way's curve with liquid silver. Archaeologists discovered miniature offering cavities at these convergence points, suggesting priests used the flowing water to ritually activate celestial patterns. Even the boulder's tilt is intentional, matching the 17-degree inclination of Earth's axis, allowing shadows to stretch across the carvings in seasonal rhythms that match real star movements. This wasn't just art, it was a functioning astronomical calendar and a sacred theater where stone, water, and sky performed in concert. The real mystery lies in the carving's dual purpose. Beyond constellations, the ceiling features precise alignments with surrounding mountain peaks, not just as landmarks but as navigational aids. A groove representing the June solstice sunrise lines up perfectly with Mount Ampé's summit when viewed from a specific ceremonial platform 20 paces east. Another set of channels aligns with the December solstice sunset over the distant Sacsayhuamán ruins. These weren't random connections, they formed a geodetic network, allowing travelers to triangulate their position across the empire's vast road system using nothing but the stars and this stone compass. Yet the most haunting detail emerges at night. During full moons, the granite's quartz veins catch the light, making certain constellations glow faintly, those same stars that would have been overhead at that exact hour centuries ago. Incense residue found in the rock's pores suggests night-long vigils where priests tracked these luminous patterns, perhaps timing rituals to celestial events invisible to the naked eye. The ceiling even accounts for atmospheric refraction, the way Earth's atmosphere bends starlight, with some carvings offset by the exact angle needed to compensate for this effect at Sacsayhuamán's altitude. What unfolds isn't just an ancient observatory, but a stone-bound symphony of astronomy, hydrology, and sacred geometry. While medieval European stargazers struggled with quadrant instruments, the Incas engineered an immaculate celestial mirror that needed no moving parts, only the patient turning of the Earth itself. Stand beneath it during solstice dawn, and you'll witness sunlight strike a sequence of grooves that ignite across the surface like a heavenly switchboard, each beam triggering the next in a chain reaction of light. It's a reminder that the greatest technologies aren't always those that shout their complexity, but those that listen patiently, perfectly, to the whispers of the cosmos. Hidden among the rolling hills above Cusco, the waters of Tambomache whisper secrets of a civilization that didn't just channel rivers, they sanctified them. Known as the Inca Baths, this labyrinth of stone-carved aqueducts and ceremonial fountains is no mere feat of hydraulic engineering. It's a liquid temple where every drop follows a path as meticulously planned as the threads of a sacred tapestry. Walk these terraces today, and you'll hear the same water songs that once serenaded Inca nobility, crystal-clear streams cascading from fountain to fountain in an unbroken, gravity-defying chorus. The precision here borders on the supernatural. 3 primary aqueducts feed Tambomache's fountains, each cut from andesite with joints so tight they leak less than modern concrete plumbing. Unlike Roman aqueducts that relied on steep gradients, these channels descend at angles as slight as half a degree, just enough to keep water moving without eroding the stone. But the real marvel is how the fountains operate without a single moving part. Water pressure is regulated by hidden chambers that act like natural valves, while strategically placed notches create miniature waterfalls that aerate the flow, keeping it fresh without filters. Modern engineers have tested the system and found something astonishing. After 500 years, the fountains still deliver identical water volume to each outlet, varying by less than 5%. Yet Tambomache's true magic lies in its duality. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was a theater of liquid worship. The 4 primary fountains align with the cardinal directions, their waters believed to carry prayers to the 4 Sais regions of the empire. During the December solstice, sunlight strikes the central fountain at an angle that refracts through the water, casting rainbows across a carved altar where priests once made offerings of gold dust and sacred flowers. The Incas even engineered the acoustics. Certain channels amplify the sound of flowing water into a resonant hum during dry seasons, mimicking the roar of distant glaciers. Dig deeper and the sight reveals layers of sacred geometry. The fountains form perfect isosceles triangles when viewed from above, their proportions matching the harmonic ratios found in Inca musical scales. Underground, diverted streams feed a hidden network of channels that resurface in ritual baths, each pool temperature controlled by varying its depth and sun exposure. The shallowest baths stay icy for ceremonial purification, while deeper ones warmed by thermal stones were likely used for therapeutic soaks. What emerges isn't just a water system, but a meditation on the Inca worldview. At Tambomache, engineering and spirituality flow together like converging streams. The same hands that calculated hydraulic gradients also carved serpent motifs into the fountain walls, symbols of the underground rivers they believed connected all holy sites. Today, as modern Cusco battles water shortages, these ancient channels still function flawlessly, a reminder that the greatest civilizations don't conquer nature, they converse with it in a language of reciprocity and reverence. Tucked into a quiet alleyway in Cusco's historic center, the Stone of the 12 Angles hides in plain sight, a single block of andesite so meticulously carved, its edges interlock with 12 neighboring stones in a dizzying display of precision. At first glance, it looks like a puzzle piece snapped into place by some ancient giant, but lean closer and the real magic reveals itself. Not a single gap between the stones, not even the thickness of a razor blade. This isn't just masonry, it's stone whispering where rock seems to bend to the will of its creators. The question isn't just how they achieved such perfection, but why they poured such obsessive effort into a single stone on an otherwise unremarkable stretch of wall. The practical explanations are compelling. The Incas built for eternity, and this wall, part of the palace of Inca Roca, sits directly atop a seismic fault line. Those 12 interlocking angles aren't just for show, they're a masterpiece of earthquake engineering. When tremors strike, the irregular shapes distribute tension like a mesh, allowing the wall to sway without cracking. Modern engineers have modeled this design in earthquake simulators, and the results are startling. Walls with polygonal joints outperform rectangular ones by withstanding up to 50% more ground movement. The stone's slightly convex surface also plays a role, creating a self-centering effect that nudges displaced blocks back into alignment after a quake. Yet symbolism whispers just as loudly here. 12 was a sacred number in Inca cosmology, representing the months of the year, the hierarchy of sacred peaks, even the layers of the cosmos. By embedding this numerical harmony into stone, the builders may have been encoding a spiritual blueprint. The wall's location adds weight to this theory, flanking what was once a ceremonial portal to the Coricancha, the temple of the sun. During the June solstice, sunlight would have grazed the stone's uppermost angle before flooding the corridor behind it, as if the rock itself were a celestial trigger. The stone's creation is its own enigma. Without iron tools or mortar, artisans likely used a painstaking trial and error process. They'd carve a rough shape, then test-fit it against neighboring blocks, dusting the contact points with colored clay to reveal high spots. Each adjustment would take days, perhaps weeks, until the fit was flawless. Some researchers speculate they used heated sand to polish the final surfaces, creating frictionless planes that slid together like ice. What's most humbling isn't the stone's precision, it's its humility. Unlike the towering monuments of other civilizations, this marvel sits at eye level, inviting touch. Run your fingers along its edges and you'll feel no tool marks, no scars, just quiet confidence. The Incas didn't need to shout their genius from mountaintops. They embedded it in the fabric of their city, trusting that someday someone would pause in a narrow alley and wonder how stone could be made to breathe. Hanging like jeweled boxes from the cliffs of Peru's Ollantaytambo Valley, the tombs of Ravache defy gravity, time, and logic. These miniature citadels, painted in ochre and cream with delicate red accents, cling to vertical rock faces hundreds of feet above the valley floor, not as caves or niches, but as freestanding structures of stone and mortar. Their tiny windows peer out like watchful eyes, their sloped roofs deflecting centuries of wind and rain with uncanny resilience. To call them tombs feels almost insufficient. These are dollhouses for the divine, where the departed were laid to rest not beneath the earth but among the clouds. The engineering behind Ravash's cliffside mausoleums begins with the sheer improbability of their construction. Workers would have scaled these dizzying heights using ropes and ladders, hauling quarried stone and buckets of mortar with nothing but muscle and balance. Each tomb was built outward from the cliff face on narrow ledges, their foundations anchored by protruding rock formations that acted as natural brackets. The real genius lies in the mortar, a mix of clay, limestone, and cactus sap that remains flexible even today, allowing the structures to sway slightly during earthquakes without cracking. Modern engineers have analyzed samples and found microscopic plant fibers woven throughout, giving the mortar a tensile strength comparable to modern reinforced concrete. But Ravash's true marvel is its preservation. The tomb's vibrant pigments derived from iron oxide, kaolin clay, and crushed cochineal insects should have faded centuries ago under the Andean sun. Instead, the overhanging cliffs create a perfect microclimate. Shade shields the paint from UV rays, while the valley's dry air prevents moisture damage. Even the positioning of the tombs plays a role. Their facades angle slightly downward, allowing rain to sheet off without eroding the delicate murals. Some tombs feature ventilation slits that regulate humidity, preventing the buildup of mold or condensation that could degrade the interior offerings. Inside, the tombs reveal another layer of sophistication. Unlike simple burial chambers, these are multi-room structures with separate spaces for ceramics, textiles, and mummified remains. False floors create air pockets that insulate against temperature swings, while niches in the walls align with solstice sunrises, bathing the dead in celestial light during sacred days. The ceilings curve inward at the top, a design that funnels rising warm air away from the contents below, an ancient form of climate control that kept organic materials from deteriorating. What's most haunting is how Ravash's builders leveraged the landscape's dangers into protections. The same cliffs that made construction treacherous also deterred looters, while the tomb's height placed them beyond the reach of flash floods that periodically scour the valley. Even the local wildlife became unwitting guardians. Condors nesting on nearby outcrops discouraged intruders with their massive wingspans. Standing beneath these suspended sanctuaries, you're left with a humbling realization. The Chachapoya people didn't just conquer the cliffs with these tombs. They partnered with them, turning sheer adversity into everlasting shelter. Legends whisper through the sacred valley of stones that defied gravity, massive blocks floating through the air like feathers, guided by the chants of Inca priests. These tales, passed down through generations, speak of megaliths soaring over mountains and rivers to settle effortlessly into place at sites like Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuamán. But beneath the mysticism lies a tantalizing question. Could these stories hold grains of truth, distorted echoes of real engineering techniques lost to time? Modern physicists have scrutinized these myths, searching for plausible explanations hidden within the symbolism. One compelling theory centers on acoustic levitation, a phenomenon where sound waves of specific frequencies can counteract gravity's pull. Laboratory experiments have demonstrated how ultrasonic vibrations can suspend small objects in mid-air, and the Incas' mastery of resonant spaces like the echoing chambers of Chavín de Huanta suggests they may have understood harmonic principles intuitively. Imagine teams of workers rhythmically striking giant bronze plates, creating standing waves that reduce the effective weight of multi-ton stones, making them easier to maneuver. Another hypothesis points to advanced pivot and fulcrum systems. The so-called floating stones might have been carefully balanced on wooden rollers or pivoted along lubricated earthen ramps, creating the illusion of weightlessness as they inched forward. Spanish chronicles describe witnessing massive blocks being moved by no more than 20 men, a feat impossible without some form of mechanical advantage. Recent archaeological experiments have shown that wet clay or llama fat grease could reduce friction to nearly zero, allowing stones to glide with minimal force. Yet the most intriguing possibility lies in the stones themselves. Geologists have discovered that certain Andean andesite contains high concentrations of quartz, a piezoelectric mineral that generates electric charge under pressure. When subjected to precise percussion like the rhythmic tapping of stone hammers, these rocks might have temporarily altered their frictional properties, a phenomenon modern science calls acoustic lubrication. Local legends describing priests singing to the stones could metaphorically represent this process, where vibrations transformed the very nature of the rock. The truth likely intertwines myth and method. Floating stones may symbolize the Incas' unparalleled understanding of physics, where knowledge was encoded not in textbooks but in oral tradition and ritual. As you stand before these megaliths today, their impossible seams and dizzying weight, remember, the boundary between legend and engineering isn't always clear. Sometimes the most advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, especially when its secrets vanish with the voices who wielded them. High in the Andean plateaus, where the air thins to crystal clarity, the mirror lakes of the Andes don't just reflect the sky. They capture it with a precision that borders on the supernatural. These glacial basins, polished by millennia of wind into perfect natural mirrors, became the Incas' celestial chalkboards. Unlike the crude reflections in a still pond, these high-altitude lakes behaved differently. Their icy surfaces so still, so flawless, they didn't just show the stars, they seemed to swallow them whole. What the Spanish dismissed as primitive stargazing was, in truth, an advanced optical laboratory. The Incas noticed something modern physicists would later quantify. At altitudes above 14,000 feet, with minimal atmospheric distortion, these lakes became near-perfect parabolic mirrors. During the dry season, when the water's surface tension peaked, priests would float lightweight, offering bowls carved from pumice, not as tributes but as floating focal points. The concave meniscus of the water's edge would bend incoming starlight, concentrating it onto these vessels in a phenomenon called the lens effect. Chronicles describe how certain constellations appeared to ignite these floating bowls with blue-white light during solstices, creating a natural planetarium where the heavens weren't just observed, they were channeled. But the real innovation lay in their alignment. The Incas didn't use random lakes, they selected basins flanked by precisely spaced rock formations. At Lake Pamacocha, for example, two natural stone pillars frame the June solstice sunrise. When dawnlight strikes the water at a 23-degree angle, the reflection projects an elongated sunbeam onto a carved stela half a mile away, marking the agricultural calendar's turning point. Similarly, Lake Titicaca's sacred shoreline near the Island of the Sun features submerged stone channels that, when filled to certain levels, refract moonlight into distinct spectral bands, early evidence of prismatic experimentation. These aquatic observatories doubled as engineering tools. Before constructing solar alignments at Machu Picchu or Ollantaytambo, priests would test celestial geometry on water. By floating reed rafts with movable markers, they could simulate stone placements before committing to granite. Archaeologists have found petroglyphs near these lakes depicting constellations with dotted lines, not as art, but as angular calculations. The Incas were reverse engineering the sky's movements using fluid mathematics, tracing trajectories with ripples instead of quippers. Perhaps most astonishing is how they weaponized reflection. During the Inti Raymi festival, priests at Lake Yanayaca would position polished bronze discs along the shore, redirecting sunlight onto gold-plated temple walls in Cusco 20 miles away. This wasn't mere spectacle, it was a communication network. Spanish accounts describe fire signals flashing across the mountains, likely these mirror relays transmitting solstice alerts or invasion warnings faster than any chasqui runner. Yet beneath all this ingenuity hums a deeper truth. The Incas didn't just use these lakes as tools, they revered them as living entities. Offerings found beneath their waters include oddly shaped crystals that, when placed at certain depths, focus sunlight into tight beams. Were these early lasers? Probably not, but they reveal a civilization that saw no divide between science and spirituality, where a lake wasn't just water, but a doorway to the cosmos, its surface trembling with the weight of stars. Today, modern astronomers still visit these lakes to calibrate telescopes, their laser rangefinders echoing rituals performed 5 centuries earlier. The mirrors remain, the sky still leans close, and if you stand very still at dawn, you might catch the ghosts of those who understood something we've only recently relearned. Sometimes to touch the infinite, you need only bend light. Perched on a knife-edge ridge in the cloud forests of Vilcabamba, the ruins of Vitcos cling to the mountainside like a stone hawk guarding its nest. This wasn't just another Inca settlement, it was the final redoubt of a dying empire, where the last rebel rulers held out against Spanish conquest for nearly 40 years after the fall of Cusco. What remains today is more than archaeology. It's a blueprint of desperation and genius, where every wall, every tunnel, every terrace was engineered to buy time against annihilation. The city's defenses began with the land itself. Vitcos sprawls across 3 staggered plateaus, each one accessible only via a single fortified staircase carved into sheer cliff faces. Attackers would have to navigate these choke points under a hailstorm of boulders rolled from above, a tactic evidenced by circular stone counterweights still found along the upper terraces. But the true innovation lies in what's hidden beneath. Radar scans have revealed a honeycomb of tunnels weaving through the bedrock, some wide enough for troops to move unseen between strongholds, others so narrow they could only serve as escape routes or ambush corridors. The most chilling discovery, a subterranean chamber directly beneath the main plaza with perfect acoustics, whispered commands here could be heard at outposts half a mile away, creating a literal underground communication network. Vitco's terraces tell another story of adaptation. Unlike the agricultural steppes of Machu Picchu, these were battle platforms. Each level is backed by stone walls with slanted firing slits, angled to give archers overlapping fields of fire while exposing minimal body surface. The retaining walls themselves are deceptive. What appears to be standard Inca masonry actually contains hollow compartments filled with loose gravel. During earthquakes or siege engine impacts, these cavities absorb shock waves, preventing collapse. Even the staircases were weapons, their treads vary randomly in height to break an attacker's rhythm, a psychological tactic still used in modern fortress design. Yet for all its martial prowess, Vitco's fall was inevitable. Spanish accounts describe how cannon fire shattered the outer gates in 1543, but the real vulnerability lay in logistics. The city's ingenious water system, a network of sealed stone channels fed by hidden springs, became its undoing when conquistadors diverted the flow. Starvation did what swords could not. In the final hours, rebels reportedly escaped through a shadow canyon, engineered with mirror-like rock surfaces that amplified starlight for nighttime flight. What endures isn't just the stones, but the lessons they hold. Vitco's engineers anticipated concepts we now consider modern: passive defense, psychological warfare, even seismic resilience. Walking these ruins today, you're not just tracing the footsteps of the last Incas. You're stepping into a masterclass in how civilizations fight to survive when all hope seems lost. The moss-covered walls still whisper their defiant calculus. Sometimes the greatest engineering isn't about winning, it's about refusing to surrender. Hidden among the cloud forests above Machu Picchu, the ruins of Lactapata guard a secret written in sunlight: 3 stone gateways positioned so precisely. They catch the first rays of dawn during equinoxes like celestial keys turning in cosmic locks. These aren't just doorways, they're solar instruments carved from the living rock, their alignment so exact that on March 21st and September 21st, sunlight slices through the eastern gate at a perfect 90-degree angle, flooding the central plaza with a golden rectangle that illuminates carved markers on the opposite wall. Modern astronomers have mapped this phenomenon and found something astonishing. The gates don't just mark the equinoxes, they calibrate them, compensating for atmospheric refraction by aligning slightly askew from true east, a correction that wouldn't be mathematically formalized in Europe for another 300 years. The genius of Lactopota's gates lies in their dual purpose. For farmers, these solar events signaled critical planting and harvest dates. When the equinox light touched specific notches on the western wall, it triggered the planting of maize in lower valleys and the harvesting of high-altitude quinoa. But for priests, the gates were celestial theater. During ceremonies, participants would stand in the plaza's center as dawn light passed through aligned gates, casting elongated shadows that connected them to carved serpents on the temple walls, symbolizing the moment when the earthly and divine realms touched. The effect wasn't static. As the sun rose, the light would travel along grooves in the stone floor, pointing toward different ritual stations like the hands of a clock. What's truly revolutionary is how these gates functioned as part of a larger network. Lactopota's western gate aligns perfectly with Machu Picchu's Torreon Sun Temple across the valley, creating a 17-mile-long solstice alignment. On December 21st, sunrise at Lactopota's gate coincides with sunlight striking the Torreon's sacred stone, suggesting coordinated ceremonies across the empire. Even the gate's proportions hold meaning. Their trapezoidal shapes match the angle of the sun's path at this latitude, turning architecture into a three-dimensional sundial. But the most haunting detail lies beneath the stones. Excavations revealed underground channels that fill with water during the rainy season, reflecting the equinox sunlight upward through perforations in the plaza floor. This created a double illumination, light from above meeting light from below, a phenomenon chroniclers described as the sun embracing its shadow. 5 centuries later, as modern agronomists rediscover the benefits of planting by celestial cycles, and physicists study ancient light manipulation, Lactopota's gates stand as silent witnesses to a truth we're only now relearning. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about conquering nature, but collaborating with its rhythms. Standing in that plaza at dawn, watching light pour through stone like liquid time, you realize these weren't just markers of days, they were bridges between earth and sky, where a civilization's survival and spirituality converged in a single, glowing instant. High in the eastern Andes, the ruins of Raquay hold an acoustic secret, walls that don't just block sound but carry it. Lean close to one of these weathered stone surfaces and whisper, and your voice will travel along the masonry with eerie clarity, reaching someone dozens of feet away as if you're standing right beside them. This isn't some trick of the wind, it's deliberate acoustic engineering, a feat that modern architects are only now learning to replicate with high-tech materials. The magic lies in the stones themselves. Unlike smooth, uniform blocks, Raquay's walls are built with slightly undulating surfaces, microscopic ridges and valleys that act like sound channels. When vibrations from speech hit these textured planes, they don't scatter aimlessly. They funnel along the grooves like water down a flume. Even more ingenious is the mortar mix, a blend of clay and crushed quartz that hardens into a resonant medium, turning entire walls into giant tuning forks. Modern acousticians have measured these effects and found the walls amplify frequencies between 150 and 1000 Hz, the exact range of the human voice, while dampening distracting highs and lows. Compare this to modern amphitheaters like the Hollywood Bowl, where sound engineers rely on parabolic shapes and electronic amplification to achieve similar effects. The Incas accomplished it with pure geometry. Raquay's curved walls form natural waveguides, bouncing sound in predictable arcs. Strategic gaps between stones create Helmholtz resonators, pockets that trap certain frequencies and release them with delayed echoes, enriching vocal tones. The result, a whispering gallery that predates London's St. Paul's Cathedral by centuries. But Rakei's walls weren't just for novelty, they served a sacred purpose. Chroniclers describe how priests used these voice roads during ceremonies, standing at opposite ends of the plaza to deliver synchronized chants that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Hidden niches may have held bronze plates to add metallic harmonics, turning simple speech into something unearthly. Today, as audio engineers study these principles for concert halls and emergency communication systems, Rakei stones remind us that sometimes the most advanced solutions are written not in circuitry but in stone. At the oxygen-starved summit of Mount Lulaloco, where winds howl at 80 miles per hour and temperatures plummet to -30 degrees Fahrenheit, the Incas engineered tombs that turn the mountain itself into a time capsule. Here, at 22,000 feet higher than commercial jets cruise, they constructed burial platforms so precise, they preserved 3 child mummies in near-perfect condition for 5 centuries. This wasn't just ritual, it was cryogenic science centuries before the concept existed, where architecture and altitude conspired to cheat decay itself. Reaching these heights required logistics bordering on the supernatural. Workers ascended for weeks, hauling quarried stones, gold offerings, and even living sacrifices up slopes where every step burned like fire in the thin air. The final stretch defies belief, a vertical gain of 2,000 feet built without ropes or harnesses where missteps meant plunging into glaciers. Yet the Incas didn't just climb, they terraformed. Platforms were carved directly into the mountain's spine, their foundations stabilized with crushed gravel to absorb seismic shocks. Windbreaks of precisely stacked stones shielded the tombs from erosion, while strategic gaps between rocks allowed gales to whistle through without toppling the structures. Modern mountaineers still struggle to explain how anyone worked at this altitude without modern gear, let alone engineered permanent installations. The tomb's preservation mechanics reveal even deeper genius. By positioning the burials just below the snowline, the Incas exploited a natural refrigeration cycle. Winter blizzards encased the chambers in ice, while summer sun never quite reached the shaded niches, maintaining a perpetual freeze. Forensic studies of the Lulaloco children show their tissues underwent ideal sublimation, frozen so rapidly that moisture evaporated without damaging cellular structures. Even the burial textiles played a role, layers of alpaca wool wicking moisture away from the bodies, preventing ice crystal formation that would have shattered skin over centuries. But the true masterpiece was the tomb's air circulation. Tiny ventilation shafts angled against prevailing winds created a passive convection system. Cold air sank into the chambers while warmer air escaped through upper vents, preventing condensation that could foster mold. Spanish accounts mention priests placing star stones, possibly meteoric iron, near the bodies, minerals now known to inhibit bacterial growth. Every element, from the tomb's orientation to the density of the stone plugs sealing them, was calibrated to transform harsh conditions into preservation allies. What emerges isn't just a burial site, but a negotiation with impossibility. The Incas didn't conquer Lulaloco. They collaborated with it, turning a deadly peak into a sanctuary where time itself froze. As modern scientists struggle to replicate these preservation methods in labs, the mountain's silent guardians remain, their faces untouched by centuries, their story etched not in stone but in ice. Beneath the windswept plains near Cusco, the caves of Llanlacayoc yawn open, not as natural formations, but as deliberate excavations where ancient hands reshaped solid rock into something extraordinary. These aren't mere hollows in the earth, they're megalithic galleries, their ceilings artificially heightened, their walls lined with precision-carved niches that spiral upward like the chambers of some subterranean beehive. Step inside and you'll feel the weight of intentional design, each shelf and alcove placed with geometric purpose, their edges too sharp, their angles too exact to be the work of chance. Theories about Llanllechayoc's function spiral as intricately as its niches. The most practical explanation casts these caves as imperial storehouses, their temperature holding a constant 55 degrees Fahrenheit, perfect for preserving potatoes, quinoa, or freeze-dried chuño. The niches could have held woven baskets or ceramic vessels, their staggered placement allowing air circulation to prevent mold, but look closer and contradictions emerge. Unlike typical Inca storage units, these caves lack ventilation shafts or drainage channels. Instead, their walls bear traces of soot, suggesting torches burned here for extended periods, an odd choice for simple granaries. Ritual use seems equally plausible. The cave's layout mirrors celestial patterns. Certain niches align with solstice sunrises, casting dagger-like beams of light onto carved symbols during specific times of year. Some alcoves are too small for storage but perfect for holding miniature offerings. Found artifacts include tiny gold figurines, shell beads, and packets of coca leaves wrapped in woven threads. Even the acoustics hint at ceremony. When chants resonate through the main chamber, sound waves bounce between niches to create an eerie chorus of echoes, as if the stone itself were singing. Yet the most tantalizing clues lie in the cave's expansion marks. Tool grooves suggest workers didn't just carve these spaces, they meticulously widened them over generations, as if following some grand blueprint. The ceilings rise in distinct tiers, each level marked by a band of polished stone. Modern laser scans reveal something astonishing. The cave's proportions follow the same harmonic ratios found in Inca musical instruments, suggesting the spaces might have been tuned to amplify specific frequencies. Could Llanllachayoc have been a hybrid part warehouse, part temple, part scientific laboratory? Imagine priests tracking constellations from light patterns on the walls while laborers counted tribute goods in the shadows. Or consider the possibility of an initiation site, where neophytes spent nights surrounded by whispering echoes and flickering torchlight, their isolation magnified by the stone's embrace. What lingers isn't just the mystery of purpose, but the sheer audacity of the engineering. Without metal tools, these artisans reshaped living rock into a space that defies categorization. The niches don't just hold objects, they hold questions, each one a silent challenge to our assumptions about how the ancients bridged the practical and the sacred. Stand in the deepest chamber where the air hums with the weight of centuries, and you'll feel the truth. Some places weren't built to be understood, only experienced. Stretching 150 feet across the roaring Apurimac River, the bridge of Huihuachoca didn't just connect two cliffs, it defied gravity itself. This colossal rope span, the longest in the Inca Empire, hung like a spider's silk thread over a gorge so deep, mist often obscured the water below, but what looks fragile from a distance was anything but. The bridge's strength lay in its intricate weave, a masterpiece of fiber engineering that could support the weight of marching armies, laden llamas, and even stampeding livestock without snapping. The secret started with the grass. Workers harvested iku, a tough Andean bunch grass, only during the dry season when its fibers were at their strongest. These weren't simply tied together, they were braided into primary cables thicker than a man's torso using a technique modern engineers call reverse twist layering. Imagine 3 thick ropes twisted clockwise, then wrapped counterclockwise by another 3, creating a structure where tension only tightens the weave. The result, cables with a tensile strength rivaling steel, capable of bearing over 10,000 pounds, but raw material was only half the equation. The real genius emerged during construction. Teams on opposite cliffs would launch lead-weighted kite lines across the gorge, early predecessors of construction cables, to pull provisional guide ropes. Once secured, artisans wove the bridge's floor from smaller ropes in a diamond pattern, deliberately leaving gaps to reduce wind resistance. The side rails weren't static. They were dynamic shock absorbers, with loose coils at each anchor point to flex during high winds or seismic tremors. Annual renewal rituals turned maintenance into sacred science. Every June, communities gathered to replace frayed strands in a days-long ceremony. Old ropes weren't discarded. They were left dangling beneath the new bridge as a secondary safety net, creating a layered fail-safe system. Spanish chroniclers recorded witnessing spans so thick with accumulated ropes they resembled the beards of old men swaying in the wind. What modern replicas fail to capture is the bridge's silent intelligence. Unlike rigid steel spans, Huayhuachuca's flexibility allowed it to dissipate energy, swaying harmlessly in winds that would shatter stiffer structures. The slight sag at its center wasn't a flaw. It lowered the bridge's harmonic frequency, preventing the deadly oscillations that collapse modern suspension bridges. 5 centuries later, as engineers struggled to design lightweight spans for remote areas, this ancient grass behemoth still whispers a radical truth. Sometimes the strongest connections are the ones that know how to bend. Perched on the steep slopes above the Urubamba River, the terraced city of Patalacta unfolds like a giant stairway to the clouds, a meticulously planned agricultural powerhouse that fed the imperial elite at Machu Picchu. Unlike simple farming villages, this was a carefully engineered landscape where every terrace, canal, and storage room worked in concert to turn rugged mountainsides into fertile fields. The Incas didn't just grow crops here, they designed an ecosystem balancing water, soil, and altitude with precision that modern agronomists are still unraveling. Walk through Patalacta's concentric terraces and you'll notice something extraordinary. They're not uniform. Each level varies in width, depth, and orientation to create microclimates where different crops could thrive side by side. Lower terraces, bathed in warmth, grew maize and chili peppers, while higher elevations hosted cold, resistant quinoa and potatoes. But the real stroke of genius lay beneath the surface. Excavations reveal layered soil beds, volcanic ash for drainage, clay to retain nutrients, and sand to prevent waterlogging, a trifecta of textures that functioned like a natural filtration system. Modern tests show these soils still retain more organic matter than nearby untreated land, a testament to the Incas' understanding of sustainable agriculture. Water was the lifeblood of Patalacta, and its irrigation systems bordered on hydraulic alchemy. Channels carved from solid rock diverted meltwater from distant glaciers, zigzagging down slopes to slow velocity and minimize erosion. Gravity did the rest. Each terrace had strategically placed drainage holes that allowed excess water to cascade downward, creating a self-watering cascade that required no pumps or labor. During droughts, gates made of woven reeds could redirect flow from one sector to another, prioritizing thirsty crops while leaving hardier plants to fend for themselves. Even the canal's gradient was calculated to the inch. Modern laser scans showed deviations of less than 1 degree across miles of stone-lined waterways. What set Patalacta apart wasn't just productivity, it was strategy. This was a breadbasket designed for resilience. Crop rotation wasn't left to chance. Farmers followed a strict cycle dictated by Quipu records, alternating legumes with grains to naturally replenish nitrogen in the soil. Terraces were staggered so that if one failed, others could compensate. And perhaps most crucially, the city's storehouses, round stone buildings perched on high ridges, were positioned to take advantage of cooling winds that preserved food for years. Spanish accounts describe finding stores of chuño, freeze-dried potatoes here decades after the empire's fall, still edible thanks to Patalacta's perfect preservation conditions. But the city's true legacy lies in its symbiosis with Machu Picchu. Every ear of maize, every sack of quinoa grown on these terraces traveled up the royal road to the citadel, carried by llama trains that navigated dizzying switchbacks. The terraces themselves mirrored Machu Picchu's sacred geometry. Their curves echoed the citadel's temple of the sun, while irrigation channels aligned with solstice sunrises. This wasn't just a farm, it was a cosmological mirror, ensuring that even the food sustaining the empire resonated with spiritual significance. Today, as archaeologists use drones to map Patalacta's underground water networks, they're discovering even more sophistication. Subsurface channels funneled water directly to plant roots during dry months, while terraces facing due west captured afternoon heat to extend growing seasons. The lessons written into these stones feel eerily relevant: how to cultivate abundance without exhausting the land, how to harness gravity instead of fighting it. Patalacta's terraces don't just feed the past, they offer a harvest of wisdom for a future where sustainability isn't an innovation, but a necessity. Winding through the sacred valley, the Urubamba River does more than carve through rock, it mirrors the heavens above. Along its banks, temples and plazas rise in perfect alignment with celestial bodies, turning the entire valley into a vast astronomical instrument. At the heart of this cosmic blueprint lies the Pleiades, a star cluster the Incas called Colca, or the storehouse. Unlike modern astronomers who chart stars for navigation or science, the Incas wove them into the very fabric of their survival. When the Pleiades appeared bright and clear in the June sky, it signaled the arrival of winter, a celestial green light for planting potatoes at higher altitudes. But if haze dimmed the cluster's glow, priests predicted drought, advising farmers to delay sowing. This wasn't folklore, it was precision climatology disguised as mythology. The temple complex at Pisac offers perhaps the clearest testament to this celestial choreography. Its terraces don't just cling to the mountainside, they're arranged in concentric semicircles that mirror the Pleiades pattern when viewed from the valley floor. During the winter solstice, dawn light strikes a carved niche in the upper temple, casting a beam that travels down the terraces like a celestial finger pointing to ceremonial basins below. Nearby, at the fortress of Ollantaytambo, 6 monolithic stones stand in a row, their spacing matching the angular distances between the Pleiades' brightest stars. Spanish chroniclers recorded priests using these stones to track the cluster's movement, adjusting ritual calendars by fractions of a degree, an astronomical precision rivaling medieval Europe's best observatories. Yet the true masterstroke lies in how these alignments interconnect. From the air, the Urubamba Valley reveals itself as a sprawling celestial map. Straight-line sects, ritual pathways radiating from Cusco extend through the landscape, linking temples to specific stars and solstice events. The river itself acts as a terrestrial Milky Way, its curves mirroring the cosmic river the Incas called Mayu. At the spring equinox, sunlight pours through a trapezoidal window at Machu Picchu's Torreon, striking a ceremonial stone at the same moment the Pleiades crest the eastern horizon. 500 years later, this alignment still holds with less than half a degree of deviation, a feat requiring generations of naked eye observations and painstaking adjustments. What's often overlooked is the engineering beneath the mysticism. To achieve such precision, Inca astronomers used simple but brilliant tools. Water-filled troughs served as primitive levels to calibrate temple foundations. Polished bronze plates reflected star positions onto carved grids, allowing priests to record subtle annual shifts. At sites like Moray, circular terraces doubled as amphitheaters for public sky watching, where offerings were burned at specific points to mark planetary movements. These weren't isolated rituals, they were the empire's heartbeat, synchronizing agriculture, warfare, and trade across thousands of miles. The Urubamba's celestial architecture reaches its zenith at the Temple of the Moon in the Salcantay Range. Here, a natural cave has been sculpted into an astronomical tableau. During the June solstice, moonlight filters through a fissure in the cavern's ceiling, illuminating a silver disk embedded in the wall, a mirror reflecting the Pleiades' position at midnight. This convergence of geology and cosmology creates a fleeting moment when Earth, Moon, and stars align in perfect dialogue. The Incas didn't just observe the cosmos, they built chambers where the universe whispered back. Standing in this valley today, you're not just walking among ruins, you're stepping inside a colossal clockwork where every stone measures time, every terrace charts the sky. Modern astronomers have confirmed what the Incas knew instinctively. The Pleiades 26,000-year precession cycle aligns with climatic shifts in the Andes. In a civilization without writing, they encoded millennia of ecological wisdom into architecture, turning temples into textbooks and plazas into planetariums. The stars didn't just guide them, they spoke, and the Yorubamba still echoes their language. Beneath the emerald terraces of Tipón, a hidden lattice of waterways hums with the quiet precision of a Swiss watch, stone veins channeling liquid life through the earth with mathematical grace. These aren't mere ditches, but subterranean masterpieces of hydraulic engineering, their gently sloping beds descending less than half a degree over vast distances. Modern laser surveys reveal the staggering accuracy. The primary aqueduct drops only 3 feet over nearly a mile of terrain, maintaining a flow rate of exactly 1 cubic meter per hour, enough to feed ceremonial fountains without wasting a drop. The secret lies in their construction. Unlike surface canals prone to silting, these underground channels were lined with interlocking andesite slabs, their tight seams sealed with a mortar made of clay and cactus resin that flexed during earthquakes. Workers carved the tunnels slightly wider at the top than the base, a genius anti-erosion tactic ensuring faster water flow along the bottom while minimizing friction against the walls. At junctions, curved deflector stones subtly redirected currents to prevent turbulent collisions, a principle modern civil engineers call hydraulic separation. But the true stroke of innovation appears in the details. Every few hundred feet, sediment traps protrude like stone pockets from the tunnel walls, cleverly positioned expansions where water slows just enough to drop suspended grit before continuing its journey. Meanwhile, strategically placed air shafts prevent vacuum lock, allowing smooth flow while doubling as maintenance access points. The Incas even accounted for thermal expansion. Channel sections fit together with millimeter gaps that closed during cold nights when the stone contracted. Above ground, these hidden arteries blossomed into liquid spectacle. The aqueducts fed 16 ceremonial fountains, each engineered with unique hydraulic personalities. The central cascade aerates its flow through a series of stepped notches, producing a melodic trickle that masks background noise, perfect for private rituals. Another fountain near the Sun Temple features a hidden resonance chamber that amplifies certain frequencies when filled, turning flowing water into an instrument. What makes Tipón's system timeless isn't just its functionality, but its philosophy. While Roman aqueducts conquered gravity with brute force arches, the Incas coaxed water through stone with the finesse of a gardener directing roots. They didn't fight nature's tendencies, they listened, then carved pathways where gravity and geometry danced in perfect harmony. 5 centuries later, as modern water systems clog and leak, these ancient channels still sing. Proof that the most enduring engineering doesn't shout its presence but flows silently beneath our feet. At the heart of Kenko's windswept plateau, a massive limestone outcrop rises from the earth like the frozen crest of a primordial wave, its surface scarred with zigzagging channels so precise they seem to tremble with hidden intention. These aren't random grooves eroded by time. They're a hydraulic cipher carved by hands that understood water as both lifeblood and liturgy. Follow their serpentine paths, and you'll uncover a ceremonial masterpiece where fluid dynamics met celestial worship, a place where the Incas didn't just channel rainwater, but orchestrated it into a symphony of solar alignment and sacred geometry. The channel's design is deceptively sophisticated. Each zigzag follows a calculated pattern, not arbitrary angles, but precise 45-degree turns that slow water's descent while maximizing surface contact. During torrential downpours, this labyrinthine layout transforms the rock into a liquid labyrinth, guiding rivulets through a ritual journey before pooling at strategic collection points. Archaeologists discovered something mesmerizing. These basins aren't merely functional. Their depths are carved with spiral motifs that, when filled, create miniature whirlpools mimicking the celestial whirl of the Milky Way, which the Incas called Mayu, the cosmic river. Water didn't just flow here, it performed, but Kenko's true revelation emerges under the solstice sun. At dawn on the June solstice, sunlight strikes the rock at a razor-thin angle, illuminating the channel's eastern facets while leaving the western sides in shadow. This interplay of light and stone transforms the zigzags into a dazzling optical illusion, a shimmering serpent of liquid gold crawling downward as if summoned from the rock itself. The effect isn't accidental. Laser scans confirm the channel's southernmost turns align perfectly with the sun's azimuth during the winter solstice, while their northern counterparts mirror the summer solstice's path. The Incas didn't just carve a drainage system, they engineered a solar callback where water and light danced in sacred synchrony. Delve deeper and the symbolism unfolds. The zigzag motif recurs throughout Inca cosmology as a representation of Illapa, the lightning god who brought both life-giving rain and destructive storms. At Kenko, priests likely poured libations into the channels during dry seasons, their offerings following the sacred path before vanishing into the earth, a symbolic plea for balance between abundance and restraint. Nearby, a carved throne overlooks the channels, positioned so a seated observer would watch the solstice light precisely bisect the central groove. Here, the spiritual and scientific merged. The same priests who tracked heavenly movements also calibrated terraces and reservoirs based on Kenko's hydrological theater. Yet the rock guards one final secret. At night during the rainy season, when water lingered in the channels, moonlight would catch the ripples and project undulating patterns onto surrounding walls. Survivor accounts describe how priests used polished silver discs to redirect these liquid reflections onto ceremonial garments, creating the illusion of wearing constellations. This wasn't just ceremony, it was physics as sacrament, a fusion of hydraulics and astronomy that turned stone into a canvas for the cosmos. Standing before Kenko today, you're not just looking at carvings. You're witnessing a multidimensional prayer where every zigzag whispers of empires that didn't just worship nature's forces, but conversed with them in the language of engineering and light. The channels still flow when the rains come, their ancient choreography untouched by centuries, proving that some dialogues between water and stone never need words. Deep in the shadowed recesses of Machu Picchu's Temple of the Moon, whispers persist of a flame that refused to die, an eternal fire said to have burned without fuel, without tending for generations. Unlike ordinary temple braziers that demanded constant replenishment, this sacred blaze allegedly flickered ceaselessly in its stone alcove, casting unshaken light over nocturnal rituals. Was it mere myth, or did the Incas harness forces we're only beginning to understand? The temple's architecture fuels the mystery. Its inner chamber houses a peculiar vent in the floor, aligned with a fissure in the bedrock below. Geologists confirm this region sits atop natural gas deposits. Traces of methane still seep from cracks in nearby cliffs. A simple spark could ignite these gases, creating a self-sustaining flame. But here's the catch. The vent's stone collar narrows precisely to stabilize airflow, preventing the fire from raging out of control or suffocating. This isn't just a lucky geologic coincidence, it's calibrated combustion. Yet gas alone doesn't explain the legends. Spanish chronicles describe priestly rituals where the fire's intensity shifted with chance, its hues morphing from gold to blue. Modern experiments reveal something startling. The temple's walls contain quartz veins that, when heated, emit traces of boron, a mineral that tints flames green. Could the Incas have layered gas vents with mineral-loaded stones, engineering not just an eternal flame, but a chromatic one? Skeptics argue the eternal fire was more theater than miracle, a clever illusion maintained by hidden ducts feeding oil from subterranean reservoirs. At the neighboring Temple of the Sun, archaeologists found ceramic pipes that could have funneled animal fats or plant resins to hidden wicks, but no such system has been uncovered here. The temple's remoteness poses another riddle. Transporting fuel to this high-altitude sanctum would have required relentless effort, yet no storage chambers or residue have been found. Perhaps the truth lies in synthesis. The Incas were masters of blending nature's gifts with human ingenuity. Imagine a flame fed by slow-seeping gas, its burn regulated by precisely angled vents, while mineral-embedded stones amplified its mystique. The fire's eternality might have been less about physics and more about perception, a sacred metaphor sustained by ritual rekindling during celestial events, when priests could mask their interventions beneath the drama of eclipses or solstice alignments. What lingers isn't just the question of how the flame burned, but why it captivated an empire. In a civilization where light symbolized divine knowledge, an undying fire wasn't just practical, it was theological. To stand before it would have been to witness the impossible, a piece of the sun's power, tamed and trembling in stone. Today, as we pass the line between legend and engineering, the Temple of the Moon whispers a challenge. Some truths aren't just uncovered. They're illuminated. From the razor-precise masonry of Sacsayhuamán to the floating farmlands of the Urubamba Valley, the Incas didn't just build, they redefined what was possible. With no iron tools, no wheels, and no written language, they conquered the Andes' brutal terrain, bending stone and water to their will in ways modern science still struggles to replicate. These 50 marvels aren't merely ruins, they're masterclasses in ingenuity, where every joint, every channel, every alignment whispers secrets we've yet to fully decipher. Consider the sheer audacity of their achievements. They suspended bridges across dizzying gorges using nothing but woven grass, designed earthquake-proof temples centuries before seismic engineering existed, and transformed swamps into floating fields that fed millions. Their terraces didn't just cling to mountains, they sculpted microclimates, turning vertical cliffs into breadbaskets. Their astronomers tracked celestial movements with such precision, their stone calendars still mark solstices to the minute today. And perhaps most astonishing, they did it all by observing, adapting, and collaborating with nature rather than subduing it. So why does their legacy remain unmatched? Modern engineers have lasers and steel. The Incas had patience and perception. They understood materials at a molecular level, how andesite fractures under precise blows, how iku grass gains strength when braided at certain angles, how water flows fastest through channels carved at 14-degree slopes. Their techniques weren't just functional, they were harmonious, blending physics with spirituality until every wall hummed with purpose. Now we turn to you. Which of these marvels left you breathless? Was it the celestial whispers of Coricancha's golden walls, the bone-chilling resilience of the Lulelaco mummies? Or perhaps the living mathematics of Quetzalcoatl's woven threads? Drop your favorites in the comments. We'd love to hear which feats ignited your curiosity. And if you're hungry for more mysteries from the ancient world, don't forget to subscribe. The past isn't done astonishing us yet. As the sun sets behind Machu Picchu's peaks, casting long shadows over these engineering miracles, one truth lingers: the Incas didn't just build for their time. They built for eternity, and in their stones, their canals, their soaring roads, they left a challenge etched in the Andes themselves. To look closer, dig deeper, and remember that humanity's greatest innovations often begin not with technology, but with watching the world closely enough to